All right, hello YouTube. Welcome to Dark Tower Palaver, episode 153, roundtable wise. I think I'm mostly getting used to the every other episode, but I still feel like with roundtables, it feels like it's been a long time since we've been to a roundtable. Just a month between, basically, is what it's at. And I don't know. I guess we've just never had that long between roundtables. So I don't know why book clubs probably don't feel as bad because we used to go 2 to every one. So book clubs, there's always kind of been spacing.
Yeah.
Round tables, it just always feels like, oh man, it's been a minute. But yeah, let's go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own Palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the Palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, as well as the extended Stephen King universe, because all things serve the tower, right?
Yes.
And the Dark Tower is a wonderful thing to serve, isn't it? It's all gracious and loving and kind. And but my name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for episode 153 for our roundtable series. We'll dive right into the intro stuff real quick. If you want to, or if you haven't finished 7 primary books, the Dark Tower series, this is not a safe episode for you. We spoil pretty freely in these. I believe, in fact, once at least we've spoiled
The ending.
an ending. I don't remember if it was the ending or if it was a character's end before the intro was even finished. So.
Yeah.
These are very spoiler-heavy episodes, generally speaking, so if you haven't finished the books, you may want to stick to our book club episodes. With those, we stay where we're at or before. We don't jump ahead, except for a very small spoiler section at the very end. And then if you want to find the podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, or any podcasting service of your choice. If you could subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those, because Blaine will destroy you if you don't say that. It's just what you have to say.
It's required.
Yes. And then as well as speaking of things you're required to say, if you want to join us live, you can do that over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver, and YouTube will destroy you, and Google has every opportunity to do that, especially Peter and I that surround ourselves with Google products, phones and whatnot.
Yeah.
So Google could destroy either of us quite easily. So if we don't say these things, they will destroy us, and it is if you want to subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications on the YouTube side, that definitely helps. And then the notifications are awesome because they'll let you know when we're going live. If you're already a subscriber and have notifications, for instance, you might have a notification on your phone right now. I know I always do. After we get done recording, I'll look down at my phone because obviously I don't check it while we're recording.
This went live.
Yeah, it's like Dark Tower Palaver went live. I'm like, I know.
No shit, Sherlock.
Now, one day if I ever saw that alert and I didn't know, that would be a problem.
That's a gate.
Then if you want to find the show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com. That is where you can find all things Dark Tower Palaver. We have links for everything over there, as well as our questions for new listeners. If you want to introduce yourself as a new listener, that is the way to answer the questions that we've come up with. You can answer one of them, all of them, or anything in between. And the show notes for this episode will be over there as well. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We just had a hangout yesterday where we watched Mr. Harrigan's Phone, me for the first time since 2022 when it came out, and Peter for the first time altogether.
Yeah.
So that's in the Patreon feed, as well as you get access to our Discord server where you can send Peter emojis 24/7.
No.
It's a wonderful thing. Nothing like Peter loves more than having an emoji waiting for him when he wakes up every morning.
You stop it.
And then if you want to contact the show, Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
The best way is email. It's show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then check out our social medias. We got our Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. We got a Blue Sky account. It's @DarkTowerPalaver.bsky.social. Then we got our Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver. Get yourself the real logo. The hashtag Tad is terrible with the tower. That is the main logo for the show.
Oh, I don't think so. That's why it's not on the screen, sir. On the screen is the real logo.
That's just because you control it. If I controlled it, the real logo would be up.
Oh man, and I will say happily that in our last book club episode, Rhea finally returned.
Ugh.
It had been weeks and weeks and weeks, or months, I guess, months on months
Yeah.
of not seeing Rhea. So it was great to see Rhea back.
I went home and took a very, very long shower after that episode. Just ugh.
And now that we're on the spoiler side of things in a roundtable, we could definitely say that there's much worse things from Rhea coming up.
I know that's the part that I have to like try and like bottle up when we're doing book clubs. Is like I have to be like, oh well, this part's not that bad because what comes later is much worse.
Much worse. But when you think of it in perspective, though, when
Yeah.
you're just focusing on like the individual moments, though, you do realize how bad she is. You know,
She's awful.
yeah, so that is I don't think we have anything calendar wise to cover. Everything's pretty much on schedule. Nothing really moving wise. I think it's the end of the year before, or closer to the end of the year before we have another month with 3 episodes. So not a lot to talk about on the calendar. But we will be back, of course, next time with our book club.
Yeah.
We'll see if Rhea returns. That's what we're tracking now.
Hope not.
So let's go ahead and dive on into the news. There has been a bunch of news. I think the news has filled out a bit again since we've been going, basically monthly on the book clubs or roundtables rather than every. What do we used to do? 2 roundtables in a book club? That even seems wild to me that we did that. We didn't do like roundtable, book club, roundtable. Or I guess that's what we're doing now. I guess because I'm thinking in sets of 3. Because so I guess we used to do full months where it was just book club or roundtables, which I guess makes sense. And maybe who knows as we get closer and Flanagan stuff starts happening, maybe
The really funny ones is when I showed up here and went, "Isn't this our 3rd roundtable in a row?" And you went, "Oh yeah, it is. There should have been a book club." And I'm like, well, it's not because we didn't read.
we'll do it live.
No.
So that does, of course, take us to the first bit here, which is Flanagan's Corner. Gotta love that, right? So
Every single time I get my hopes up. Every single time. But I'm sure that if something was actually announced, I would hear about it beforehand. With the Discord server and just like general movie stuff that comes across my Facebook and my other social medias and everything, I'm sure I would actually hear about it.
yeah, I guess we'll have to see. So the first one here, the headline is a little bit not necessarily revealing, but it's Amazon MGM Studios TV head on big Emmy showing the future of Fallout, Tomb Raider, and more. This is from Lucas Manfredi from The Wrap on July 18th, 2024. So Amazon MGM Studios head of television Vernon Sanders was doing an interview with The Wrap on all things Amazon TV, and just like the days of 2015 and 2016, the final question published in the article turned out to be a Dark Tower question. Was that was like a thing for like a couple of years, or it was just like just a random.
And by the way,
yeah, it's just, and it was always at the end.
since I got you here,
and I don't know if it was like the last question they actually asked, but it was always the last question they put in all the articles. So, in fact, I even realized it when I was prepping for this one, because like I just was like looking and I was like thought about control Fing, but like, well, let me just go to the last question first and see if that's it. And it was. So the question was, any update on the status of the Dark Tower from Mike Flanagan? And I'm going to just pause real quick to just say, I find this an interesting thing to ask because Amazon has no connection to this Dark Tower series
just
from Mike
to Flanagan.
Yeah, just to Mike Flanagan. It's interesting to ask that because it feels like asking for an update would almost imply that like they're
Working on it.
already working on it. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of a weird thing. Not saying like, hey, are you guys interested in Mike Flanagan's? No, they just so maybe
they're not asking Flanagan or one of Flanagan's people or anything like
Yeah.
that. Flanagan's camp. They're asking a studio, basically,
Yeah.
which is Amazon MGM
Yeah.
Studios.
which is who I've been on
So-
record saying I believe is who's going to
end up with it because he has that deal with them right now.
deal.
What's the one that's coming up really soon for Flanagan?
Life of Chuck?
Life of Chuck. I
Yeah.
wanted to say Life of Charles for some reason, but
yeah,
I mean,
well,
close enough.
yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. So it's just interesting that they're asking Amazon here.
Yeah. So sorry, you just spurred my memory because it reminds me of Scent of a Woman.
Yeah.
When they have the dinner scene, and his name is Charles, and one guy keeps calling him Chucky.
Yeah.
And he ends up putting him in, like, what is it, a Ranger chokehold?
Yeah.
Al Pacino does. So I guess I shouldn't say it's the same thing because some people might take it offensive.
Some people don't like it when you shorten their names for no reason.
P.
Listen, pet.
Luckily, my name is unshortenable.
just call you Top.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the answer that we get from Vernon Sanders, head of Amazon TV. Says, Mike is incredibly passionate about this, and we're incredibly passionate about Intrepid. There are a few things in the hopper with Intrepid, and Intrepid is, of course, Flanagan's company.
Oh, okay.
And he says a few things in the hopper with Intrepid with us, and we're trying to figure out right now how to prioritize. So I don't have anything to share specifically on Dark Tower other than that we are in weekly conversations with him about this and a few other pieces that we're leaning into.
Weekly conversations.
Yes.
Weekly.
Yes.
Conversations.
Yes. Again, I am going to be stunned if it ends up being anyone.
It's going to be Amazon.
Like
this just swayed me 100%. It's Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, but
it's Amazon.
And also, like, again, they funded Mazzara to film a pilot. That's millions of dollars. They spent hundreds of thousands, if not maybe low millions, to pay him to write 2 episodes, and then they paid to cast, fly everyone to Eastern Europe and film. So I just feel like they've kind of put their money where their mouth is, as well as their connection to Flanagan. But this now kind of confirms some of the speculation that it is part of the conversations that Flanagan is having with Amazon. So and weekly conversations. So this isn't just.
I don't know if it was you or one of our listeners that said it either in the Discord or here in the chat. I seem to remember it being written out, so maybe it was in the Discord. But I remember someone saying, like, there's no way that Flanagan comes in and the first thing he makes is going to be Dark Tower.
Yeah.
They're going to get a couple things out of him first, and then maybe he'll be able to make the Dark Tower because they don't own the rights to that. He does.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, they're going to be like, hey, we got you on this new deal. We understand that's something that you want to do. Give us a little bit first, and then we'll talk about that because we've been burned by that before. You know, they're Glenn Mazzara. We've been burned by that before. Let's do a couple things, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, but ultimately it comes down to him, though. Like,
it's true.
In terms of if he wants that to be his next project, which we know that it's not because we got The Exorcist and Life of Chuck coming up pretty soon on more of an independent venture. But I would say that, like, if he wanted to prioritize it, again, I think that's kind of where it's like if they truly want to start seeing return on this investment that they put in him, the Dark Tower is probably their best opportunity. Because the other thing we know is that these rights that King gives to people are limited in time. So, Flanagan could lose these rights, and that's why he might tell them, like, fuck off. I did Life of Chuck, or that doesn't even almost matter now at this point because it's done. There's not a lot of work to be put into it. He's probably putting a lot of work into The Exorcist. Does he have time to do something after that, but before the Dark Tower, and not lose the rights back to Stephen King? So, another couple notes I have here. I find it interesting because, again, officially Amazon's not connected with this at all. So this answer proves that they're not only interested, but very likely and very actively talking to Flanagan about it. But I will say, to be the other side of it, that's the positive end.
Yeah.
There is a negative side. Of course, it has to be pointed out that his answer is that they're incredibly passionate about Intrepid. They never said they're passionate about the Dark Tower. It's easy to kind of just merge this all into one thought because that's what we're focused on. But ultimately, he says we're very incredibly passionate about Intrepid, and then he says there are a few things in the hopper with Intrepid, and we're trying to figure out how to prioritize. And then he says we have specifically on the Dark Tower, other than we are having weekly conversations with him about this and a few other pieces. So there's nothing here that's truly saying that, like, this is the only thing that they're talking about.
Oh yeah, we've been talking to Josh to Flanagan about this for months, and it's the only thing we talk about. When he's done with this and this, then he's going to do that.
Yeah,
that's not what they're saying.
It's not that. So it's good in terms of, for the analysis side, to just point that out that it is part of this, and it sounds like it's part of these weekly conversations they're having with Flanagan. But I don't want anyone to come away with misinformed that, I don't know, to get more hyped than we need to be.
Let's still remember the developmental hell that we went through before we got the movie.
Yeah.
And then the Glenn Mazzara series. Like, we can be patient until we get official word.
Yeah.
But we can be excited that Amazon is involved.
Yeah.
It seems like they're talking to him.
Yeah.
So.
And I have been saying it for, I don't even know, maybe a year now or more. But
Ever since the deal with Flanagan and Amazon, you've said this.
Yeah, just it to me it all makes sense for it to be with Amazon. Now of course Hollywood is a strange creature and sometimes unusual things happen. But I would say I will be stunned if it's not Amazon. But yeah, definitely kind of interesting to see what that Amazon. Yeah. I mean, even to hear the Amazon head knowing what Dark Tower is.
He's like, I don't even know what that is. We'll talk with Flanagan sometime about that. That's
that could
no, we're talking to him weekly about it.
Yeah, because I mean,
which also could mean that Flanagan keeps bringing it up, and the head of Amazon is going, "Shut the fuck up, Flanagan. We don't want to talk about that."
Well, then the other thing is, generally speaking, you've got like developmental people at Amazon that work for this person. And this person isn't necessarily in the mud on the front lines with every production. They may get reports with like on different projects, but it's like there's probably a developmental person underneath him that would be more. Like whatever. So I guess all I'm saying with that is there would be a chance that a guy at the top level like this may not actually know what the Dark Tower is. He just knows that we Flanagan is someone that we have on our roster. We want to work on stuff with him or whatever. So the fact that he knows it also feels right to me because it's kind of like any business, right? It's like if you go to some whatever and it's like you go talk to like some frontline hourly person, it's like, do you think like the regional manager that's over like the entire Western United States in our case knows who that person is?
No.
Or knows a regular customer that like it's levels. And yes, you may get reports where it's like, oh, let me go and read the report on for the developmental person's working with Flanagan, give me a weekly report on what you guys are all chatting about and stuff. But like, so the fact that he's at least willing to like lump Dark Tower in with some of these other things that they're talking weekly about.
I think you hit it on the head. The fact that he knows the name.
Yeah.
He knows what it is. Like,
yeah.
If he was like, I don't know what that is, that would concern me.
Because I do believe that this is a different executive than was during the Mazzara.
It is.
Because it was shortly right after the Mazzara thing folded that Amazon, the person, the head of Amazon, left somewhere else.
It wasn't just the person. Like, they did a whole restructuring, didn't they?
Yeah, because I think the person that was in charge of Amazon went to another company, took another job somewhere, and so then you obviously reshuffle. You get a whole new regime coming in. So this isn't even someone that would know it because, oh yeah, I remember cutting a check for Glenn Mazzara's Dark Tower. Like, this is a different person, and maybe they were working at a lower level. But like ultimately, I don't know. Again, this is encouraging to me because obviously we've heard Flanagan talking about it for since was it December? Or was it 2022? It was either the very, very end of 21 or the beginning of 22.
Somewhere
I remember
there,
when he announced it. So we've been hearing a lot from a lot is a relative term.
Yeah.
We've heard Flanagan talk about it and be asked about it quite a bit, but to hear it from Amazon side is pretty cool. And I will also mention that outside of the announcement window, even the movie, we never heard executives talk about the Dark Tower when we were waiting on the movie. So because again, until you get it signed, why would an executive talk about it if it's not their project? So that's pretty awesome. Kind of exciting. We'll have to keep an eye on where that leads. Next up, The Exorcist won't get in the way of Mike Flanagan's Dark Tower. So this has obviously been a concern with a lot of us in the last 4 or 5 months was it that it was announced?
Yeah, when The Exorcist got announced, we both had the same reaction. Yes, damn it.
Yeah, it's a twofold thing where it's like it's really exciting as a horror fan and as an Exorcist fan to get one of the best horror guys on in the world on The Exorcist is pretty great. But then on the Dark Tower side, it's kind of a bummer because it's like that might mean that the Dark Tower is probably not the highest priority. So this is by Ryan Scott from Fangoria on July 24th, 2024. So Ryan recaps that about a year and a half ago, we got the news that Flanagan owned the rights for the Dark Tower. And then not long ago, Flanagan reassured us that this project is still very much alive, which that's true. I remember covering that a few episodes back. Mm-hmm. He then talked about how Flanagan got the job to do the next Exorcist film and said that Flanagan was recently part of the Talking Scared podcast where he was asked directly if The Exorcist will get in the way of the Dark Tower. And this is a direct quote from Flanagan here. Sorry, my text is smaller than it usually is. That's much better. I guess I'm getting old or something.
Get your reading glasses out, Ted.
Yeah, something, man. Well, no, it's just... I don't know, giant screen, everything's all squished into different little windows and like I don't know, it's you got to be Got to make sure the text is big enough to read, otherwise I'm squinting. And this is what Flanagan said. He says, it's not in the way. They coexist very well. I think the trick with the Dark Tower is it's still just taking an enormous amount of time to get going. But we're further along than the last time we spoke. It seems to be moving on its own on its own momentum. There's so much logistical, boring legal stuff that we've kind of got to machete our way through to get this thing moving. But yeah, it's not at all stalled, and none of the other work other work that's kind of emerged has any way of taking away from it. So essentially, yes, The Exorcist is not going to get in the way. And it sounds to me kind of like when he's talking about there, he says there's so much logistical, boring, and legal stuff that we have to machete our way through. It kind of makes me wonder when he talks about the legal stuff. We've already heard him refer to the fact that, like, there's obviously a lot of different rights that you've got to get, right? There's stories that have been sold to certain studios, and he's talked about how you'll have to, like, kind of beg and, bargain with people that you're friendly with to get potentially get rights. And then he also mentioned that if those end up not panning out, he might have to replace characters with characters that he can get the rights to. Kind of makes me wonder, is some of that the work that's happening right now? Like, it almost seems like that'd be premature, but I wonder if that's part of the package of selling this to someone, is you kind of clear all the legal obstacles and get some of some sign-offs and some handshake agreements to where it's like, hey, here's the pitch. And if they're going to have some contentions of like, well, how are you going to get, Father Callahan to show up here? That's
exactly. I was just thinking about that because we have the Salem's Lot movie that's tied up with everything and is finally going to be released.
I'm still waiting for a fucking date on that, dude.
I just looked it up. Who has the rights to Salem's Lot? And it says Max, and it says it's coming out in 2024. And here we are in August.
Yeah. A lot of people speculated it's probably going to be close to Halloween.
Spooky
But
season.
Again, how has that not been announced yet?
Yeah,
right now. I mean, that's a couple months away.
The thing that I just read is that it's not going to theaters. It's going straight to Max.
Straight to Max. Yeah.
They don't announce that stuff ahead of time that often. Big stuff they'll do, like Dune Part 2, when that was coming, it's like 1 week until Dune Part 2. Or if it's like a show like House of the Dragon, that banner's been freaking everywhere. That Season 2's finale was last week or this week?
Last week.
Last week. So that stuff, yeah.
But a Stephen King work, I mean, that's kind of a big deal. It was originally made to be a theatrical release. Like, feels to me like it's big enough that we should know right now.
I guess to your point, Penguin has been advertised, and that's coming out. Well, that's coming out this month, isn't it? Or next month,
September.
Yeah, so next month.
So this isn't one of those things either where it's like a more obscure King book either. This is Salem's Lot. This is his second novel. This is one of the more iconic, Stephen King works. Like, I guess all those things put together makes me just kind of like baffled that they're not like, they just give it a date. They don't have to do like a bunch of marketing because they're probably wanting to just throw it on there and then forget about it. It's out now, whatever. It's just weird they haven't given a release date to say that like October 19th it's going to be on Max or whatever, and that's all they need to do, right? They're doing that shit now where they put out that thing last week with House of the Dragons finale where they had like small snippets and showing like dates that didn't exist before, and like there was like a 6-second clip of like Welcome to Derry, and there was a clip for The Last of Us, and like there's a bunch of stuff because it's, again, they're kind of just like teasing
Last
you a
of
little.
Us Part 2?
Yeah, they're teasing you on a couple things that are coming, and it's like in the middle of there you couldn't just have a title card that said Salem's Lot October.
I mean, they have a full movie. They couldn't do a 6-second clip,
Exactly.
Maybe it's because they don't have plans for it yet. Maybe it is going to be after October,
Yeah, it could
Maybe
be,
it's going to be the end of the year kind of thing.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And that's where I'm starting to wonder, everyone's suspicion that it will be around Halloween season, which would make sense, but also I'm starting to think that like that may not be the case because I feel like we would know about it by now if not.
But anyways, back to the Flanagan thing is like, if Warner Brothers owns Salem's Lot, then don't they own Father Callahan?
Yes.
And if we were looking at Amazon MGM, then we have an issue with Wolves of the Kala then.
Not really. Mike Flanagan's done a lot of work with Warner Brothers.
That doesn't mean that they're just going to willingly give a character over, right?
Yeah. Because that's how you breed when like the next time he's got a big movie that he might come to your studio because you do him a favor of, and then also right now.
But doesn't he have an exclusive deal with Amazon right now?
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's one of those things where, it's kind of a I scratch your back, you scratch mine type business. And like Warner Brothers kind of knows that like this is a big dude. Like, he just got signed to The Exorcist. He's done Doctor Sleep for us. Like, he's done some cool shit, and he may be a guy that you don't want to disappoint. He's not a small time filmmaker that you could just abuse. Like, so it's kind of one of those things where they might just be like, oh yeah, like, because I mean, ultimately, if you were to use like Dan Torrance, it'd be them as well. So that's Warner Brothers as well. So
the Overlook or any of the stuff from The Shining.
And I think that what it comes down to is the fact that he has a connection and he's worked with them. There's probably relationships there that he could like hit someone up and be like, hey, remember when we did this movie together, like, hook me up with this, and they might be. And the other thing that I would say that's interesting too is that piece of shit that's running Warner Brothers right now has actually been selling like rights to their shit to other people. Like they just signed like the Looney Tunes to like someone. Like he's basically, and almost a lot of people are joking that he's just like piecing out Warner Brothers right now. Like, not that he's selling the rights entirely, but he's selling distribution. And there's like
he's doing what Marvel did in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. And because he's kind of more of a bean counter than anything else. So it's like he just seems to be like more worried about the bottom line than anything else. And so suddenly there's like shows that like I want to say that he just did like in the last 6 months or so, like The Sopranos, like some big time content that HBO owns got licensed to
a Band of Brothers is on Netflix.
Yeah, that's another one. Exactly. So things like that. So with all that happening as well, I wonder if it's kind of a thing where it's as well as Flanagan's.
It's in the process of being worked out, but it may not exactly be like a top priority. I know he says The Exorcist won't get in the way of the Dark Tower, but that doesn't mean that he's planning on the Dark Tower being started this year. He may have a plan that, okay, I'm going to do Life of Chuck, I'm going to do The Exorcist, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
The thing is, we don't know what Flanagan's actual plan is. They just asked if The Exorcist was going to get in the way of the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
But what if Flanagan doesn't have it planned until start filming mid to late 2025?
Well, and there's a lot of, ultimately, like, I don't know that he's producing. I know he has his partner with his company that's a producer. So it's like, from his perspective, if he's writing and directing, there's a very busy period that's probably right now writing the script for The Exorcist. And then there gets the point where the producer then takes over to like, let's get the cast, let's figure out location, let's figure out costumes, like the hiring the crew. Flanagan wouldn't be as involved in that. So that's a downtime now where he could kind of work on the Dark Tower. And then when it gets to shooting time, director hat goes on.
Yeah.
He's now going to be very busy. And then editing, he's going to be busy as a director. But then after that, hand it over to the post-production people. Now you got more free time. Like, so I think that's kind of where it gets, is like, it's not like it's just this holistic brick in the middle of the thing where it's just like The Exorcist, nothing else.
Block out everything from August until October. That I'm working on The Exorcist nonstop.
Exactly. And that's just not the way it is. So I do, and also what I am encouraged about is he says, but we're further along than the last time we spoke.
So he is getting work done.
Because as I'll say, it's easy to like overlook the idea, just see that The Exorcist won't get in the way. But there's other stuff in this quote where he's like, it's further along than the last time we talked.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. Okay, that's an update. We may not know what all that means,
right?
But it's an update that he is advancing.
It also goes to what I was saying, is that maybe it's just that he has a plan for this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what his thing with Amazon is like, hey, we don't need to worry about this, but here's what I'm working on. And he's just giving an update, a sit rep kind of situation with them, where he's just going to be like, yeah, Tad, I got 2 more pages done of the Dark Tower since last week.
Yeah.
Like, I got another half a season ready.
Yeah.
We're up to 3.5 seasons now. I know that we're talked about doing 5 or 6 seasons and everything. And he's like, this is where I'm at. Maybe that's all it is, the conversation.
Yeah.
And Flanagan has a plan.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that Flanagan has a plan for the Dark Tower. We know how passionate he is about it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be just like a whim that it's going to be like, yeah, you know what? I think it's time that I actually focus on the Dark. I think he has it like,
yeah.
I think he does have it blocked out on his calendar where it's like, all right, April of 2025. That's where it's going to get announced. That's where I'm going to dive in. I'm going to be done with all these other projects and wrapped up all this other stuff that I wanted to do first.
Now
I'm going to do this.
I have a suspicion, and I've had it for a bit now, that I do believe that he's actually got a deal worked out, and it's a matter of when it gets announced.
It's a handshake agreement kind of thing.
Like for instance, if it's Amazon, and I'm correct, I believe that Amazon they've already signed the dotted lines, and it's a matter now of like, when's the ideal time to announce this, and again,
Well, because you don't want to take away from his other projects.
Well, it's not even just that, but also when he's talking again, there's so much logistical, boring, and legal stuff that we have to kind of machete our way through to get to get that thing moving. I don't know that you necessarily start doing legal work before selling, or maybe it's not even the dotted line is signed yet, but it's like an agreement.
It's a handshake agreement,
kind of like we talk about it all the time when we're covering like pop culture on the other show, where it's like, so and so is, it's like not signed yet, but it's like they've agreed to star in this movie. It's like, but it's not on paper yet, but there's middle grounds of like, I'm not involved and I'm completely involved. There's kind of a middle ground of like, hey,
it's the same thing in sports. Yeah, I'm going to sign with this team. 3 days later, they actually sign the contract.
Yeah.
But they announce it and everything like that.
Yeah.
Hollywood's even more time in between.
Yeah.
Where it's like, at Comic-Con, hey, I'm going to play, Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
2 months later, he actually signs the contract and starts film. I know that's not the case with Pedro Pascal and everything, but you know what I mean.
Well, no, we had the rumors of like the Fantastic Four, for instance, like 3 months before it actually got officially done.
Exactly,
so it's like,
and that's what I'm saying is like Hollywood even has more time in between where it's like, yeah, he's the guy. Yeah, it's gonna be him.
Yeah, so it just makes me curious as I again we're over analyzing a couple sentences here, but it moves on it's moving on its own momentum. I think that's kind of I would read that as probably that this is a very big project.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like what are the things with the shipping containers, those giant fucking boats that you takes like a mile to fucking turn, because they're so big. Or like I feel like that's kind of what this is. Like this isn't a little speedboat.
I mean, even like an aircraft carrier. You're not going to turn that on a dime.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It takes a mile to turn.
Yeah. And if it's not a jet ski, right? Like if you were doing like a independent movie, it's probably more of a jet ski that you could just
or a short film
or short, yeah. And it's like this is big, and again the logistical thing kind of makes me wonder if like there's at least an agreement in place with Amazon, and now it's a matter of like working out like because the other thing too is like I wonder if he's actually writing like. Because we know he's written some scripts, he's talked about that, but I don't think he's going to go through and write the scripts in order. At some point, he's probably to go and create like outlines of every season.
Yeah,
because then he could start dealing with like the lawyers to figure out like, hey, in season 4, I'm going to need Father Callahan to show up, and that's something that's owned by Warner Brothers as part of Salem's Law.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like you just mentioned it, like he's going to say to the lawyers, "I need this." Well, whose lawyers? His lawyers? No, I don't think so.
And I
think it's the handshake agreement. I think he's talking to the Amazon lawyers.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where the weekly updates are coming in. Is like, hey, yeah. So I got through this part. I want this.
Everything's eventual has never been done on film, so Dinky Earnshaw is fine. But Hearts in Atlantis has been done, so that's owned by someone.
Did the rights stay? Are they expired now?
Usually the rights end up being in perpetuity thing where it's like, I mean, there's exceptions like comic books where it's big characters, but it's like, when you're a studio, you may buy the rights to a book. It's like you now own those rights. So it's like if you're so-and-so studio, you may own the film rights to Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that the television rights aren't a separate entity.
Yeah.
The problem with like Salem's Lot is it's only ever been a TV thing. Now it's becoming a movie thing, but it's like both rights are tied up where it's like I'm trying to think like The Shining doesn't exist. Well, I guess the miniseries existed. So I don't know how the rights work on that. If anyone got it or because King was so involved with that, I wonder if some of the rights actually belonged to him for television. He just had like ABC air it or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there is differences in things.
And that's exactly what he's talking about. That's the stuff that he's cutting through. That's the stuff he's working on is all of that.
Yeah. So very, very encouraging on both fronts, both the fact that Amazon is apparently having weekly conversations that include the Dark Tower, and Flanagan is assuring us all that The Exorcist is not going to be anything that's going to get in the way of his progress on the Dark Tower. And the other cool thing is that this is a passion project for him, so I don't think that he would let it get in the way. Because I'm not going to say anything bad about Glenn Mazzara, but Glenn Mazzara came into this project not being a fan. He learned a lot, and he obviously, we kind of heard on those podcasts him talk the talk that he kind of knew what he was talking about, but this dude wasn't like a lifelong fan of the Dark Tower that read it. He's someone that came on board wrote and was attempting to show run an adaptation of it. I think there's a difference between that. I think you see that in the modern day with like Stephen King adaptations or Marvel adaptations. When you got these filmmakers that grew up on this shit, they've got a different loyalty to, or Star Wars, they've got a different loyalty to it than maybe someone that would just kind of came to the job and went, oh, what job do I have? Oh, the Dark Tower. Okay, let me figure out what this is. Let me read these books real quick. And like, it's a different entity because he's such a fan, and he's talked the talk for a while now. We know that it's a passion thing for him.
Yeah.
It also makes me wonder if King might be a little bit more lenient about the rights reverting back to King. If it does take a little bit of time. If like again, Life of Chuck is almost non-existent at this point. Like it's in the can. It's pretty much done. I don't think there's a lot of his time going to that anymore. And since it is independent, I wonder what kind of like publicity is done for it.
Yeah.
Like I really think it's down to The Exorcist now, and then a matter of after The Exorcist, is it Dark Tower or is it something else? And then the Dark Tower. So I don't know. Overall, though, pretty encouraging stuff after a lot of radio silence for a number of months now.
I think a large part of it was just the fact that we had those 2 strikes and everything. So I don't think that it was by choice for Flanagan. I think it was just that his hands were kind of tied.
Yeah.
That he couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like he could work on it on his own, but he can't talk to the studio. He can't work with anyone, and everything like that.
Well, writing wise, he couldn't. Even on his own, he theoretically he shouldn't have written anything, which I'm sure he didn't, right?
Yeah.
Like, because it's kind of a solidarity thing, even if it's like your own project, because ultimately then the studio still benefit, because then if the second the strike ends, if you now have a fully fleshed script, you could sell them.
Yeah.
Like they've kind of just.
Did they really lose anything?
Exactly.
Did they really give up anything?
Yeah, they kind of got a break there where it's kind of like those companies that like ask their employees to work off the clock. It's like, it's benefiting the company and they're kind of taking advantage of someone, like having a union person work while a strike is going on, or not even expecting if a person works while on strike, they're kind of undercutting the strike.
If they're at home fixing something and then they bring it back to work and it's fixed,
yes,
right when they get back, they don't get paid for that.
Yeah.
That kind of
versus
thing.
If they don't do anything and then once the strike resolves, now
they fix it.
Now the studio's like, hey, now we're paying you again. Like now you're going to get paid for all that time, not just sitting at home not getting paid. So there's all that too. But
Alan says in the chat, thank you guys. This is all great news. I misread Alan's name. I thought it said Alan Arson. I was like, oh, geez.
Firestarter?
Charlie? Karate chop.
Karate chop to the face, indeed. Oh, man. And then Alan says it's odd but acceptable that there are 2 types of Stephen King fans. And though we wish they all read The Dark Tower, and that's definitely a thing too. I mean, we've talked about it over the years that a lot of constant readers have never touched these books, so that's just the nature of it, unfortunately. But let's dive on in. We actually have to dive on to the next thing, which is an interesting one. Let me make sure I've got the right slide. Akiva Goldsman.
I haven't heard from him in a while.
Breaking his silence on The Dark Tower, saying that he failed at bringing The Dark Tower to life. We remember it was about 6 or so months ago that we had Nikolai Arcel talking about it. I'm going to re-bring that up just to give some context. This is by Bretta DeVore from Collider on July 26th, 2024. So this is interesting because it didn't seem all that long. I guess I just took that as a note. He broke his silence on the Dark Tower movie, Nikolai Arcel, and this is the question and answer that Arcel did, and then we'll get to Akiva Goldsman's, because it's just very interesting to me to compare their statements, and kind of gives us some. It's like a post-mortem. We can kind of figure out what happened a little bit maybe. But the question to Nikolai a while back was, it's a big budget for a European film, around $9 million, but still nothing near an American budget. What were the differences in working on this project as opposed to your last project, the Hollywood production of The Dark Tower? And Arcel said it's vastly different. The biggest difference is, well, my studio system experience left me a little bit scarred. I'll tell you directly, it wasn't much fun. I think the people on that film really wanted to make something great. The problem was that every single person on that project wanted to make something different. There was this constant clash over what kind of film it was supposed to be, and I'm not used to that. I've never experienced that before, because in Denmark, for better or for worse, it's your movie. You come in, you say I want to do this, and then nobody really interferes until you're done and it's over. And then if you fail on your own terms. If you succeed, it's on your terms. It's very different. The U.S., it's more corporate, I believe is probably the right word. A lot more people with a lot more voices, and I felt kind of drowned out a little bit in that. It wasn't a pleasurable experience for me working on that in that particular system. I feel like, what am I even doing here at times? If my voice is just one of 80 different people who are who have the same say that I have, what am I doing here as a director? So there's a vast difference to be making to making this film and coming back home working with my friends and collaborators. Let's see. Maybe I clipped too much of the quote here. Yeah, never mind. The rest of it doesn't matter. The rest of it's not Dark Tower related. But then Collider caught up with Akiva Goldsman, a very busy person. He was at San Diego Comic-Con. I believe he was probably there in his realm as Star Trek. He's been a big producer behind a lot of the Star Trek stuff going on, like Picard, Lower Decks, a lot of the stuff. So Collider caught up with them and asked about the Dark Tower movie. And he said, quote, I kind of just failed at the Dark Tower. It's not that it got away. We just failed at it. We tried to put all the pieces together, and we couldn't hang on. It kept shifting. Everybody had different points of view. So many of us had started it and lost it. By the end, it was a lot of significant hopes and dreams that led to not very much. That's not exactly passing on a thing, but it's a loss of it. So, kind of interesting to hear, and then you kind of hear some overlap of what they're saying there, and kind of makes
it's what we suspected all along.
And it kind of makes me wonder, because usually producer is the boss. Like, I know film fans love to believe the directors are the boss because you got kind of the auteur, Quentin Tarantino type directors. By and large, though, producers hire the directors. They're like, hey, I'm producing this movie. Do you want to come on and direct this for me? So, like, the producer's the boss. So for the producer to say it kind of got out of hand and there was a lot of people involved, and then the director to say that, it's like, there's only one person that can truly trump those voices.
Studio exec.
Sony.
Yep. Someone from the studio was so what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Oh, we're making a Dark Tower movie? Doesn't look very dark or very tower-ish. I think we need a little bit more tower and a little bit less dark. Like, yeah, I just picture someone like that.
Yeah, so it's just interesting to me because I do think that's the thing I wanted to piece together is, like, now to have Akiva Goldsman and to hear some very interesting overlap. Because I think my first thought process when I heard Nikolai's quotes, my first thought process was, okay, it was Akiva Goldsman. If the director's saying that, it's the producer that is probably one of those other voices that's really driving things a different direction. Now, that's not necessarily a great way to go for a producer. You generally, once you hire a director, you want to let that director be the director.
But now let them do their job.
Yeah, but now to hear this, it's like, okay, goes above him then. This wasn't Akiva's problem. I mean,
well, it still could have been. That's the thing, is like Akiva did say that there were multiple people thinking multiple different ways.
Yeah.
Well, no, Nikolai said that actually.
Yeah.
Is that there were multiple people thinking multiple different ways. So,
no, he said it too. He says everybody had a different point of view.
So that's where I think that maybe Nikolai wanted to go one way, Akiva wanted to go one way, and Sony probably wanted to go 7 different ways.
Yeah.
And none of them were Nikolai
Together.
or Akiva's.
Yeah.
So that just makes me think that it was doomed from the start.
Yeah.
Even though we got a fan as a director, it shows you what a studio can do to mess things up.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is I think that the thing that we all got to remember is how insanely fucking hard it is to make a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, you could have the great people across the board. You could have, people from the costume designers to the producers that are fans. Still, like, I would say that, like, film is interesting because it is art, but it's like, what other art do you need to have 200-300 people come together, all work at the top level to get something to, like, to
click,
to happen in one way, let alone to also make it happen, but make it great. Like, it's just one of those things. I think we take it for granted sometimes because we fixate on the great movies and we let shitty movies just go into the distance and we forget about them.
Yeah.
So then what ends up happening is it's like this bias that builds where it's like, well, when you only remember the top 20 movies of the last decade of the 2010 to 2019. You forget how many shitty movies came out there. And so it starts to, like, skew your view where it's like every movie that comes out needs to be Arrival or Whiplash or Fury Road. And it's like, that's just not reality. And it also, it's kind of like the Tom Brady thing in sports, right? It's like he really ruined people's brains because now everyone thinks it's easy to win 6 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. Everyone needs to step back and realize, like, what he did is, like, unreal. Like, it's hard to get to a Super Bowl, let alone win 1, let alone win 2, let alone win 6. So it just breaks people's brains, and I think Hollywood has that tendency, or at least, or not Hollywood, but, like, fans at times can have a tendency of just like, well, how hard could it be? And it's like, it's extraordinary.
No, yeah. And Baraki says, and yet it can be done. For proof, I offer Dune. And Alan says, perfectly put, Baraki.
Yes.
But at the same time, for every Dune, there is...
well, the other thing is
Geely or
Dune existed back in the 80s and not in a great way, the
True.
original, and I totally agree though.
Dark Tower, exactly.
I am not going to discount it because yes, it can happen. And I remember when the first Dune came out, we came on the show right after it came out and talked about how encouraging it was because it can happen, and it certainly can. I just don't want us all to lose sight of the fact that it is very, very, very hard.
For every Dune, there's a Borderlands.
Yes,
which is.
And it's like maybe it's a bowling analogy, like for everyone that bowls a perfect game,
Jupiter Ascending, yes.
For everyone that bowls a perfect game, there's 1,000 people in that same alley that night that
don't bowl 100.
Yeah, so it's like I guess we can't let our fixation on like the really good ones make us think that that's an easy thing because those are extraordinarily hard.
That's what you're saying. It's don't focus on the 300 game. Look at everyone who's bowling and see where we're at.
Yes,
and
that's not to excuse anything. It's just a matter of movies are fucking hard. I think the only thing that would come close is maybe like a symphony.
That's what you were saying. Like you have to get a group together and everything like that. But then I started arguing with myself in my head while you were talking. Is like even if one person is off a little bit, the majority of people are not going to notice.
Yeah,
unless you're Hannibal Lecter sitting in the front row and you hear the flutist. Off a little bit.
But what is a symphony? Maybe 60, 70 people?
They can get up to about 100.
Okay,
if you do a full real big symphony.
Yeah, but a big movie you're talking 300.
Exactly.
People,
more.
Yeah, or more. So I would say that film is definitely one of the biggest, and TV is kind of in that same boat, where it's the ultimate collaborative art.
A quick Google search. Typically over 80 to as many as 100 or more is the typical symphony.
Yeah. So, and again, not to
triple the size for a movie.
Not to make excuses. It's just a matter of keeping it in perspective that this shit is very hard. Because I'm guilty of it too. There's times where I'm just like, how fucking hard is it, guys?
Yeah.
And then I'll just say that in passing, but then it's later on I'll be thinking about it actually it is pretty hard. So let's give some credit, I guess. But yeah, so that's interesting. Again, kind of maybe just more of a post-mortem. I know it's a number of years, 7 years now since the movie.
Good Lord, that's crazy. Just about 7 years on the dock 'cause it came out in August.
Yeah.
When was the actual day? I'm going to look that up. Keep going.
Next up, we've got some news on The Long Walk. So the headline here, Garrett Waring, Charlie Plummer, Roman Griffith, Davis among 7 new additions to the Lionsgate Stephen King adaptation, The Long Walk. Thank you, Deadline, for your brevity and your headlines. It's a wonderful thing. This is by Matt Grober from Deadline on July 24th, 2024. Sorry, am I missing anything in the chat? I know that there was definitely some mentioning that it can be done. Certainly, yes.
Yeah. And then we're chatting about the difference between Army and Marines. Don't worry about it.
And then Barack says, what Dark Tower needs is what Dune had in Denis Villeneuve. Someone with skills to lead a solid effort and love of the books. Maybe we have that. I do believe we do have that. I do think the problem is that the Dark Tower in its literary form is nowhere near as I guess beloved as Dune, right? Dune is probably considered one of the greatest high fantasies of all time.
Yeah.
And it's like King is just not a high fantasy writer. Yes, he wrote The Dark Tower, but it's like, people, if they're going to pigeonhole King, they're going to say he's a horror writer, whatever. And it's like, wait, this horror writer wrote kind of a high fantasy-ish type thing. It's never going to get the same kind of credit, even though most of us listening, well, I'm not going to speak for anyone. Peter and I most likely would say that we prefer probably Dark Tower over, we haven't read Dune, so we can't, that's probably not even a fair thing to say. But
it is true.
It's not to say that, whatever, it's just to say that Dune has a gravitas that goes along with it.
Even I, who had never read anything fantasy whatsoever when I was a kid, knew what Dune was.
Yes, exactly. So
July 31st, 2017 for The Dark Tower.
I thought it was August too. Are you sure that wasn't? Because remember, it got delayed a few times.
I looked at it and it said United States release date July 31st. It's on Internet Movie Database as well as 3 other websites.
Is that the premiere though? Because I swear it was August.
That's what it says.
Yeah, I think that might be because they sometimes will put the premiere on there, which is not when we would have seen it. Let's see. Baraki, everyone, what genre is Dark Tower? King? Yes. And that's pretty much it. All right, so this is, let's dive on in. Lionsgate has commenced production of The Long Walk, and part of it is they have added 7 to the cast. The newcomers are Garrett Waring, which he is from Ransom Canyon, Tut Nunyat from The Witcher Blood Origin, Charlie Plummer from National Anthem, Ben Wang from American Born Chinese, Jordan Gonzalez, Pretty Little Liars Summer School, Joshua Odick from Welcome to Derry. So we got a double dipper there. Not that Welcome to Derry's been out yet, but and then the big one for me, Roman Griffin Davis, which was the star of Jojo Rabbit.
Oh.
Details of their roles are being kept under wraps, but clearly my note is these are obviously walkers. I think the only one that jumps out to me again is Roman Griffith Davis, which was leading Jojo Rabbit. Previously, we've had it announced that Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid is one of the 2 leads that we got announced. There was 2 leads that we announced a few episodes back. This is adding to all that, and I do believe all of these that we have announced are walkers, would be my guess, because they're all young men. So I would assume that these are all going to be the walkers that we're going to be dealing with.
The White Walkers?
Next up, and I do have to take a little bit of victory lap, because I think when we talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid, I said that we're obviously going to have to see the cast spread out more. And one of the things I said is we got to get some names, right?
Yeah.
It can't be a bunch of unknowns. Well, we have some names now.
Okay.
They have added Judy Greer and Mark Hamill to The Long Walk.
Mark Hamill's in fucking everything nowadays. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's in Life with Chuck soon, so there's another double dipper for King. So Matt Grober from Deadline, this is also him, July 25th, 2024. So Judy Greer and Mark Hamill have been added to The Long Walk. Judy is known most, at least by you and I, as Laurie Strode's daughter in the latest Halloween trilogy. Well, in 2 of them at least.
Too soon.
And Mark Hamill needs no introduction.
He's the Joker.
Who is now part of 2 upcoming King stories, because he's in Life of Chuck, and now he's going to be in this. Any speculation on who these might be in The Long Walk? I don't remember the story hardcore.
I just read it.
I know you've got guards.
I just read it again.
But who?
The Major. The Major is the one who gives like the speech at the beginning, gives the boys their instructions, gives them their numbers and everything. So he's got to be playing the Major.
Okay. Yeah, and then
Judy Greer's the mom that drops him off. The main character gets dropped off by his mom at the beginning, and then he sees his mom and his girlfriend because remember, he's the only one that's from Maine, and The Long Walk starts in Maine and heads south and everything. And so his mom drops him off, and then when they're walking, they come to a town that's not his hometown, but it's his hometown
adjacent,
like biggest town closest to his home, little, one stoplight, if that kind of thing.
Also, I wanted to mention Judy Greer was in the Carrie 2013 version.
Yeah.
So she is a King alum as well.
She is.
So good call. Might be the mom. The Mark Hamill as the Major would be great.
Yeah.
You think he's going to have a very Third Reich-ish uniform?
Could.
With this being dystopian, I wonder if that'll be kind of, I don't know. What would you...
I mean, The Long Walk is very Nazi-ish.
Yeah.
When it comes to the description of like the squads and like,
yeah,
oh, you spoke out against the government, the squads come a knocking. That's what happens to the main character's dad.
Yeah.
Is that he got too vocal about politics and the squads came and took him away. That's very Third Reich.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, Brocky says Dark Tower, the New York premiere was July 31st, but the official U.S. release date was August 4th. That feels right.
That feels right.
Okay. So yeah, you're right though. Then we're just past the anniversary.
Just 6 days ago.
So that because I was like,
happy 7th birthday, Dark Tower.
Because I remember it because it was originally earlier in the summer. And Emoji Movie replaced. And it got booted.
That's why I hate emojis.
And I'm like, I remember it being August because I was like, August is kind of a weird. I'm like, but I remember it being hopeful because it's like, well, August, sometimes you have those August movies that can carry through September, before spooky season starts and kind of get a couple months worth of box office or whatever. So, that feels more right. Thank you because I was like, dude, I am losing my mind if it was July 31st because, like, that's, I mean, I know it's the last day of July, but July is like Those are your big hitters usually. So, Mark Hamill, Judy Greer added. It is also filming now. I believe that we had some talk last roundtable that we felt that it was about to start filming because there was like some of those like casting calls that were saying
for extras.
Yeah, for extras. And it makes me wonder if they were either filming second unit stuff with extras or if ultimately those ended up being wrong and it got delayed until very recently that it started filming. But it all makes sense now because now we've got big actors. We've got a lot more actors being added with the younger cast from the last one. The last article we covered. And then, now you got the names you can put on the poster, Mark Hamill and Judy Greer. So I thought about making a joke about Mark Hamill and just being like, Mark Hamill, known for his role in Clerks, or not Clerks, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, or just pick some like random.
Oh, it's Joker from Batman the Animated Series.
Just pick some random small thing that he was in, and I'm trying to think. He's not like Carrie Fisher. I almost think is easier sometimes to pick, like where it's like, oh yeah, the lady from Austin Powers, or like whatever. But Mark Hamill is a little bit tougher because he did move into voice acting, and that's like a little bit tougher versus like you got.
He was in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, voice acting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now the other note I have here, and it's not part of the article. Now that Mark Hamill is a double dipper in the King Pantheon, can we get him attached to narrate an audiobook?
Ooh, which one?
I mean, Night Shift still needs to get fucking redone and done properly.
Yeah. Cycle of the Werewolf isn't an audiobook.
Yeah, or a new King book forthcoming. I just think that Mark Hamill would be a fucking killer narrator.
Oh, he's amazing.
Don't you think? I mean, what about?
I mean, I've actually had him in an audiobook.
What about Went Through the Keyhole? Let's get that re-recorded.
Oh, there we go.
With the non-author narrator.
I mean, if we're not going to go, it's hard for me to want anyone else but Will Patton at this point, dude.
Yeah.
I fucking love Will Patton reading King. I do.
But Mark Hamill?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Oh, man. All right. So next up, we have actually discussed this at length, even before, I think it was when the Andre Overdahl version of Long Walk died, that we talked about at length about how is the Long Walk even possible?
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. Well, the next article may have some answers to that. The headline, very brief headline from Cinema Blend. A hardcore, disturbing, and somewhat controversial movie, Stephen King's The Long Walk screenwriter confirms adaptation will not be pulling any punches.
That's not long at all.
I want to do like the Ace Ventura. Just read the headline. This is by Eric Eisenberg from Cinema Blend on August 1st, 2024. So Eric recaps how King News...
Whoa, wait. Who's it by?
Eric Eisenberg.
Oh, that's not what we're showing here.
Oh, do I have it wrong on the...
Andreas Wiseman and Diana Lodehouse from Deadline.
Yeah, I did not update it properly.
Okay. Just making sure. I just wanted to make sure that we got the right person getting credit for who wrote what.
Let's see here. There's this, and go like this. And then I think I can edit it now that we're not on a slideshow.
All sophisticated and hooked in with technology.
There we go.
Minute. You agent of North Central Positronics, I don't trust you.
All hail North Central Positronics. All right, so Eric recaps how King News is seemingly never ending, and the hottest news recently is the production of The Long Walk, which seems to be moving forward very quickly as it has now gone into production in Manitoba. Then he says that he had a chance to interview the film's screenwriter, J.T. Molnar, who was previously wrote Strange Darlings, which is hitting theaters in a few weeks, actually. And to be continued on that. We might have some Strange Darlings mentions later on. So,
all right.
Just mark that in your brain. So Eric said The Long Walk is a fucked up book, and it's especially brutal read. He says some of his greatest curiosities about The Long Walk being adapted is if the film would match the tone of the book. And Molnar said, the great thing about this is that Francis, and that's the producer or director, I'm sorry. He's the guy that did, I don't have his name in front of me. He's the guy that did Hunger Games. Says Francis, this is true. I mean, it's not a low budget movie, but it's not as big of a budget as he normally works on with franchises like the Hunger Games and stuff.
Francis Lawrence.
So this is a true passion project for him. He wants to do it in the right way, in a faithful way, and he knew that meant it was going to be very hardcore, disturbing, and somewhat controversial movie. And that's the movie I was interested in writing. Stephen King also was very committed and determined for Francis to make an R-rated movie, one that honors the book and has stayed true to the book. So that's some interesting because we question it, and it's legitimate. It's a legitimate questions that we brought up, where it's like, can you really do this book?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they're just executing kids who stop walking.
yeah. I will say most of the actors I looked up are kind of in their late teens, early 20s. So
Yeah.
I do think that you've aged them up to where it won't like upset people too much. Kind of like the Spider-Man thing, where it's like
Yeah.
cast a 20-year-old to play 14-year-old Peter Parker rather
Yeah.
than cast a 14-year-old.
Is that how old Tom Holland was when he got Civil War?
I think it was around 20, or maybe he's like 18, 19, and I think he was 20 maybe by the time he was in his first full movie. Certainly he wasn't like 12 or 14, whatever it was, because he was in that tidal wave movie with Ewan McGregor. That was the age he was in Civil War. Peter Parker was that age in Civil War that he was making that movie. And when you go look at the pictures of him in that movie, it's like, oh my God, he's a child.
They look, kids look different when you look at them in the end of elementary school and the beginning of and in the middle of high school. So
Yeah, it's kind of like a live action Ahsoka upset
Yes.
some people.
yes,
It's like, that's a child. It's like,
Uh-huh.
that's a child soldier. That's
Yeah.
that's you. But animation has allowed you to not fully come to grasp those things.
Yep.
So then Eric recaps the book and the rules for the contest, including executing the boys after 3 warnings for falling below the set pace. And he said that one can understand softening the edges and how this could be hard for filmmakers. And the writer, Molnar, says, we didn't really pull any punches. Most of the stuff that you remember being tough to take in the book still exists. And there are some tweaks made to update it that I think are smart, but I'm very happy with that. The adaptation as a Stephen King fan. I'm really happy with what we did with it. And even the studio notes that came in and the feedback from everybody was on the same page as far as staying true to the brutality and the seriousness of the book.
All right.
So
We're going to see some people get straight up executed.
that's encouraging. I mean, which always sounds weird.
The thing was is that I didn't remember some of the stuff that happens in the long walk. It's more than just some kids getting executed. There is
Yeah.
some pretty fucked up shit that happens.
Yeah. So Eric recaps how the film seems to seems to be cursed with so many great filmmakers attempting to make it over the years, including George A. Romero and Frank Darabont. And the writer Molnar says the key is Francis Lawrence and Roy Lee. First of all, it's crazy because you mentioned those legends. Darabont is one of my favorite directors, and I wish he made more movies, which so say we all.
Yeah.
And then he says George Romero. He said he's a god. So say we all.
Yes.
I was able to meet him before he died, thankfully. I don't know what the problems were then, but I know that Roy Lee is. And then he stops and says, I really respect good producers, but there's not a lot of them. And then he laughs. He says, but Roy is like a magician because he gets the rights to these projects and then he really wants to make them. He doesn't just hoard them and hold on to them, which a lot of producers do. And then Eric mentions that Roy Lee has been involved in things like the It film, Dr. Sleep, and unfortunately the Stand miniseries. And then the Molnar goes on and says Stephen King trusts Roy Lee, because he made It and a number of the other things that have gone really well, and Stephen King trusts him. Roy wants to come through on that, and so I remember when he got it, and he said, would you be interested in writing The Long Walk? Do you like it? And I'm like, do I like it? I love it. I think I have my copy right here, dude. And he says, I'll read it over again and let's see. And he goes, but I think I've got a director who's interested in it, and you'll have to meet with the director. And then Eric says that a week later that he met and clicked with Lawrence, and the project was set to produce and distribute by Lionsgate, and then the writer's strike happened. Right as everything came together. Molnar says, I started to think, is this movie really cursed? Is it not going to get made again? And I'm part of that. The Deadline article came out, and now the movie's not going to get made. But after the strike, I was able to get to work on it, and I'd like to think that my script has had a lot to do with the project moving forward. He says, I wrote a script, and Lionsgate greenlit it after the first draft that I worked on with Francis for a few months. Then Eric says, then the strike wrapped and the movie is fast-tracked, and unlike previous attempts, the stars aligned for this one. And then Molnar says, Francis is great to work with. He had incredible notes and found an approach that I think has really honored the book and the themes of the book very, very faithfully, but also found a new narrative approach to add surprises to the movie. And I think it just has to do with the combination of people. And like I said, I'd like to take some of the credit, but those other writers who wrote the previous drafts, I'm sure they had great scripts too. I think I just got caught up in the perfect storm of really great people who happen to want to take action quickly. And I think that's him just kind of not trying to take credit in a way that would shit on the previous writers, because who knows, those other scripts may have actually been good too. And then Eric says, when we asked about the challenges this film would be for the actors physically, Molnar said, "It's funny, I've already noticed it on the first day, because they've created this really cool circumstance where we have like a mobile video village, so Francis and his team can move along with the walkers, and they can really be on the move and capture things as they happen. But I spent one day outside of that village kind of watching and just walking with the walkers, and then going back and walking with the walkers next to them, and I was like, wow, I feel like I just got major exercise." So it sounds like there may be like a trailer, because Video Village is like where you got like the chairs and the monitors.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know if they just put it on a trailer and they're just like dragging it behind them.
Which is really interesting, because the walkers walk on the road, so you have to have this trailer going along next to them on the side. And that was the thing, is that they had a half track in the book following the boys.
Yeah,
So-
it could be behind them as well, and they just CG it out or whatever. But like, it's just interesting because, like, yeah, I would assume that a lot of the crew probably isn't going to want to walk, especially with some of the heavy equipment, as much as the actors. Not
But Rocky asked a good question. Finish this article, then we'll get to that question.
All right, so when asked about the challenge, or I'm sorry, I already did that one. Then talking about how the film will be shot. Now, this is very interesting. He says, it's actually being shot mostly sequentially. So I think that you're going to see a change physically in some of these guys as the movie goes on. That's going to be real. It's not about hair and makeup or CG. You're going to see the physicality that morphs and people get either thinner or more tired or whatever. I mean, stuff's going to happen because they're doing a lot of real walking in this movie.
Yeah.
So that's pretty unusual to shoot a movie in order, in chronological order. But it makes sense because, like, these actors are probably going to look different at the end of this than they did at the beginning. So that's interesting. I'm pretty excited. That is the end of the article. But that's reassuring, because I think my concern, especially as this is getting fast tracked, and I don't know anything about the Hunger Games stuff, but like him being involved encouraged me, because I know those were at least successful. But I'm like, I don't know if those like really backed off of like violence, and
No.
I don't know how those movies work. So I was just like, I was suspicious though, as like, is this going to get kind of Disneyified a little bit?
It didn't. I mean, they were a hard PG-13. On the Hunger Games, and do you know the premise of the Hunger Games?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Dystopian future. There's 13 districts. District 13 was destroyed by the Capitol, so the remaining 12 districts submit a boy and a girl contestant every year for the Hunger Games. So 24 contestants, one person comes out alive.
Yeah.
And we're talking kids. Like,
Yeah.
once you hit 18, you're no longer eligible for the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And to push the kids into wanting to be eligible for the Hunger Games, your name's put in once automatically. That's required by law. But if you want extra food for your family and fuel in places where it gets cold and stuff like that, like to survive, you can put in stipends and put your name in multiple times.
Yeah.
So, like, the main character has her name in, her name's Katniss. Her name's in like 20 times or something like that.
Yeah.
And then her younger sister gets drawn.
Yeah.
Who has it in once. It's her
Yeah.
first year. She's 12. It's in. So you have 17-year-olds killing 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
In the books, it's brutal and goes into a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
In the movie, they do the action sequences. You see
Yeah.
you see a crate blocking, but you see an arm raised up and someone standing over them, and then you see the sword come down and the arm drops, kind
Yeah.
of thing. But they don't shy away from the fact that was just a fucking 14-year-old kid who just died.
It sounds like this one, though, it's going to be R-rated, it sounds like. And
Yeah.
it does sound like they're not going to pull any punches.
And it sounds like that they're also making little tweaks, so I'm interested to see what that's all about.
Yeah, indeed. So next up, we actually have some set photos.
Do we want to do the question first?
Yeah, go. I mean, so the set photos are just going to cycle on the screen. Basically, these are set photos that.
Oh, okay. There's the half track.
They're filming
Looking
on
thing.
public roads,
Yep.
so there are civilians that are able to go and take pictures and stuff. The one thing I wanted to point out, this is going to be set in the 70s. Look at these vehicles. There's not a single thing that's modern.
That's part of the dystopian future.
So like,
Is that they did not advance nearly as well, because I think there's
Yeah.
a line in the book that Germany drops the atomic bomb on America,
yeah,
so we don't get the scientists influx necessarily.
yeah,
So it might be, it might not be.
yeah.
You don't really get a sense for what year it is when you're reading the book. So.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting to see kind of what they've got going on the streets of Manitoba currently. So
Very cool.
That's all I got. But yeah, it definitely does look like it
You
might
get
be
the
a
sheriff's car because the local police and sheriffs are the ones that block off and keep spectators from touching the walkers, because if they touch the walkers, that's a death sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a Cuba type thing where everything just stopped in time, but
Exactly.
it also could be that it's a
Period piece.
period piece in the 1970s. So definitely a lot of money being spent on old cars. So, what do you got?
So Baraki says, besides The Long Walk and excluding any King stories which have already been adapted, which King story do you both think would be the hardest to adapt to the screen?
Oh man, probably Revival. That's been tried and failed twice now by two pretty passionate people, and it just seems like the budget that you need, and you're essentially gonna have like what, 3 casts, because you move over the years so much, or maybe you can get away with 2 casts and just age up do a kid and then an adult side and then age up with makeup or whatever. But I think that one is proven to be impossible. So
basically, yeah,
that one, it definitely comes to mind right away. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Anything coming to mind for you? I don't know. I'm a pretty big believer in film. I mean,
Tommy Knockers, just because it's a horrible story. So.
Oh man, trying to think if anything else jumps out at me, because again, I'm very hopeful. I'm a hopeful type. I kind of like to think that Hollywood can kind of do anything if they really put their minds to it. From a Buick 8, I know has kind of been on again, off again. I know that one's kind of I almost said Orwellian, Lovecraftian.
Yes.
And I know Lovecraft shit is very, very hard to do on screen because it's just so almost disembodied. It's almost like it you can't define it. It's so outside of definition.
Yeah.
Even Lovecraft stuff, you haven't really seen a lot of great movies come out of. So From a Buick 8 being very Lovecraftian, I wonder if that'd be hard to actually portray on screen, potentially from that perspective. I'm just looking at the list right now.
That's what I'm doing, is I'm going through it. I'm not seeing much that I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
Brock says The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon would be hard, I thought. And I haven't read that one, so
I think that one would be in the same vein as The Long Walk. Very small cast. We're talking like you could have 10 or less people in that movie.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's just a matter of getting the right person for the main character.
Yeah. And let's be honest, Gerald's Game not only got filmed but was done well. So it's like, is anything truly impossible?
Honestly, that's what I'm looking at here. Is like there's one that's called Dolores Claiborne.
Yeah,
which is very much related to Gerald's Game, and I didn't realize it.
Yeah, well, that's been adapted.
I told you, Dolores Claiborne has
Kathy Bates.
Yeah,
yeah,
really.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is a movie. Well, I could make a dark joke and say Rage is unadaptable. But not for any it's impossible to make reasons, but of like morally, I don't think that one can be.
Let's talk about one that we've been waiting on for what, 40 years now. Talisman.
I don't think it's undoable though.
I don't think it's undoable.
I think it's more.
But the question's not what's undoable, which would be the hardest.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's hard. I think that's more just the fact that Spielberg's just held that in his pocket for fucking 37 years or whatever. So.
Which makes it hard to make. He's got the rights to it, right?
Well, I don't think it's talking about. I think it's just talking about like with the content is how I'm reading the question is like content wise. I think Roadwork could be hard to make just again because of kind of someone kind of going postal is not necessarily maybe the easiest type of movie.
I don't know. That one makes you feel kind of like, like sympathetic towards him, and there are stories that they do that with where it's like, okay, he's a sympathetic bad guy.
Yeah.
That is very, very popular nowadays, especially even like when you're looking at, that's one of the biggest complaints a lot of people have with Disney is like, stop giving me straight up like sympathetic villains. I don't want this.
Yeah.
Give me a Gaston. Give me a prick. Give me the bad guy, Give me Scar. Just
give you a Mufasa. There's the real villain.
No, you stop that. You stop that.
Oh, well, there's people that tremble at his name, sir. That's not the mark of a villain. I don't know what is. Mufasa.
Like Flag? So you just prove the Flag's a bad guy.
Nobody shudders at his name.
Absolutely they do.
Nah. No, people just get happy.
No.
But ultimately, though, I don't think King's bibliography has a lot of stuff that is that hard to film. I think it really just comes down to people attempting it, but I think that we've probably mentioned all the ones that would be the hardest ones to make. And even like Revival, I don't even think that one's that hard to make. I think it's just a matter of cost. Like if you got someone behind it that was just like, we don't fucking care, we'll spend $100 million to do to go through and make this a mini series. Like
I don't think you could do a film.
They could do that easily.
Yeah.
Like that would be an easy thing with $100 million budget. But it's a matter of, can you get $100 million budget
to do Revival, which rivals stuff like Game of Thrones? Like that's a high budget for,
exactly.
if you're not going to be bringing in as many people who watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah, because it's not The Shining, it's not The Stand, it's not a top tier. Not talking quality here, because I loved Revival.
It was really good.
But your average walking
if you
person
walk
on
up
the
to
street,
someone on the street and say name 5 things by Stephen King,
yeah,
I doubt anyone would say.
I think
Revival.
if you told them to name 50, I don't know if they get to Revival. I mean, one, they probably wouldn't get 50, but two, I don't know that Revival is even one that most of them know even exists. So
exactly,
it'd be hard to get a budget for that one. But yeah, I don't know. That's I mean, we can get into short stories. That'd be a whole different take, but I think it's whenever you get into the cosmic realm is when you get the hardest, though, because I think that like when you're writing, there's just that element of like if you need something that just is not true, like From a BOK. I actually haven't read From a BOK, but I know kind of that there's like that Lovecraftian element that it's like it gets described, but it's like he almost describes around the thing more than the thing itself.
Yes,
and it's like, how do you do that on film? Like you can't. A film is very
from a BOK is doable.
I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm saying I think it would be harder because it falls into that Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Like we're still in a realm now where like I think it was there's a very very big horror filmmaker that just signed on to do a Cthulhu movie, and like that might, if that's becomes a thing and it's successful, it'll be one of the first successful true Lovecraftian movies. There's been some smaller things. There's The Color Purple with Nicolas Cage, but it's just very hard to do his stuff because his stuff's just so ethereal. Like it's not Jack Torrance with a roque mallet outside of a door. It's weird shit beyond. I mean, even like the tail end of it. Like, why is that kind of what most people point as the weakest of both versions? Because it's like, how do you? That's Lovecraftian. Like it is Lovecraftian. It's like, so how do you put that on screen in a way that truly gets people? And you just can't. Like I almost think I thought that Muschietti should have done is like, you should just go away from that altogether. Just find some way to make him like kind of more of a boss fight, but like don't try to do the disembodied in the book.
The ritual of Chud.
Yeah, I just think that because obviously I think Muschietti did an okay job, but nowhere near as bad as the TV series one was. The spider thing, but still, it was probably lesser than just Bill Skarsgård being Bill Skarsgård. Let's see. There's the next slide. All right. Let's go ahead and jump on over to the next one here. And it is with Twisters, Glenn Powell drives into a whole new whirlwind. And this is a thing on Twisters, but there may be something nestled in here. So this is from Mike Ryan from IndieWire on July 16th, 2024. So Glenn Powell is being interviewed for press for Twisters, and The Running Man came up. Because if you remember, Edgar Wright's The Running Man, Glenn Powell is the star of said movie.
I forgot about that. I was going to mention before when you were covering The Long Walk, I looked into the extended quartet. Look, The Long Walk is only the second Richard Bachman story to be adapted. The Running Man is the only other one with Arnold. None of the others have been adapted.
Wait, I thought they did Thinner.
Did they do Thinner?
I thought they did. I don't know if I think it's any good, but I think they did do. I think Thinner's been made.
They did 1996. Look at that.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a question and answer, and they ask Glenn, you're going back to UT and getting your degree. How does that even work? Do you have to go to class? And he says, I'm not going to be sitting in class with the other students on the regular. I'm basically going to be coming back because I have to finish up, but I'm going to be shooting The Running Man in the fall.
Oh.
So that's
all right.
Very exciting. He says, so I'm going to be in London, but I'm going to be going back for proctor exams. So they're letting me figure it out with distance learning. And I'm obviously going to be coming in, zooming in for class and whatnot, but I have to be back for the proctored exams. So we're figuring that out for 2 or 3 times a semester. I'll come back for all my stuff. Edgar's been very nice about letting me finish my degree in the middle of this massive movie. So Running Man is shooting in the fall.
All right.
One more. He has one more thing, and I'll talk. I'll get to my my wonder here. Speaking of the Running Man, how did that happen? And he says it was so fun for me because I searched Edgar Wright in my email the other day, writing Edgar, and he says I've been going back and forth on script stuff, and it's so fun. I guess he's writing something called Edgar, and so when he was searching his email, Edgar Wright stuff came up in his email. He says the world that Edgar developed on this thing is just outrageous. Talking about the Running Man, he says it's so good, and really we're just both such big fans of Stephen King's book, and we're going to be and it's going to be a great character. I'm so fired up about it. But I searched my email and I searched Edgar Wright in my email, and it came up. I had a wish list of directors that I wanted to work with in 2008 when I first moved to LA that I sent my agent at the time, and Edgar Wright was literally number one.
Hey, that's cool.
He says, so I'm an Edgar Wright man, and so the fact that I get to work with him right now is just so damn cool. And I'm trying to think, is that pretty much when Shaun of the Dead came out? Or no.
Shaun of the Dead was like 2004.
Yeah, that's right. 2007 was Hot Fuzz. So he would have been gaga over Edgar Wright over 2 movies, which I guess is fine because Edgar Wright's incredible. But
is that all Edgar Wright has done up until that point?
Yes, I think so. I don't think because I think 2012 was the third Cornetto movie. And then,
he hadn't done anything before this?
Or no. 2012 may have been Scott Pilgrim, maybe.
Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was 2010.
2010, then 2012.
The World's End was 2013.
2013. Okay. So, yeah, that's all he would have been going off of as the first 2 of the Cornettas. So, my note here, but filming in the fall, I'm not sure if this is going to be able to get released in 2025, which is when the film was, or when the story is set. There was this outside hope that I had that they might be able to actually get it released in theaters in 2025. So it'd actually be like the movie coming out the year that the events took place in the short story or in the novel. But maybe if things go right, they can maybe get it released at the tail end of 2025. But most likely it'll be a 2026 release. But this is exciting because we have been talking about this for a while. I know at one point we started to lose hope that Edgar Wright was even working on it still.
Yeah.
And then he updated us a number of months back that was still moving forward. Then we got the casting announcement for Glenn Powell. And it looks like now next step is it looks like they're filming in the fall.
Yeah.
So pretty excited for this might be one that is really high on my list because like truly this hasn't been adapted yet, right? Like Arnold's movie doesn't count. Like that wasn't really an
Not even
adaptation.
close.
So I'm pretty excited for this. I just read it not too long ago, probably within the last 12 months, and I thought it was a really killer story. And I think that like this is going to be fun. It sounds like they're filming in London too, which is interesting because it takes place in America, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So-
New England, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought
Like
so.
like Philly, I think.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's where it takes
because he
place.
kind of goes all over the place. Because at one point he goes completely across state lines to
Yeah.
hide with someone. So yeah, it's all over the place. But of course, Edgar Wright. I don't know if it's going to be adapted to be that it's taking place in London, or if they're going to dress up London to be something else. But
Which could
be, yes. But
and it's set in 2025. I forgot about that.
yeah, exactly. So there was this outside hope when the Edgar Wright stuff got announced. I was like, oh, dude, hopefully they can get it to come out in 2025. Filming in the fall, I'm very. I would say there's like a 1% chance it actually comes out in 2025. So then I've got some odds and ends. The first up here, we've got The Stand is getting a steelbook for its 30-year anniversary. So that's pretty fun. Sadly, I've already bought my Blu-ray version, so now I might have to buy another Blu-ray version of The Stand. So,
Good grief.
I mean, what choice did they leave me, sir?
That is pretty cool looking.
Yeah, that is. I'm looking forward to that. I still haven't even dove into my Blu-ray though. So, next up, we've got Welcome to Derry has wrapped filming. Mm-hmm. So, Jason Fuchs, I don't know how you say his last name, is the co-showrunner and one of the writer on the show. Posted a picture of his director's child chair with the text saying 237 shooting days later. That is a picture wrap on this season of Welcome to Derry. Surreal, what a ride! Can't wait for y'all to see the thing. Then a balloon emoji. 237 shooting days. Is that on purpose?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
They schedule up front like we got to make sure there's 237 days of shooting.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Cool little Kubrick Shining reference. Then we've got Uncle Stevie recommends. The first one I'm very happy about. It is. Let me see if I can find the damn. Oh, that's why, because I'm on the wrong slide. There we go. It's Uncle Stevie recommends. The first one I'm very, very happy about. He tweeted out Bone Tomahawk. He says, I was expecting nothing but a time passer on a rainy Wednesday morning, but I got a low-budget Western epic. The dialogue alone makes it well worth watching. Beware the last act when a man literally is torn apart.
Yup.
See, King's a much nicer person than me. I would never warn people.
Nope.
I may tell them that it's a very brutal movie, but I'm not
Yep.
going to tell them exactly what happens. So
You've done that to me before.
I'm very happy about this because, one, I love the movie, and two, to see King enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
But also, after he tweeted this, dude, I've actually seen like a response where I'm seeing people tweeting like, "Oh my god, I watched Bone Tomahawk for the first time. Like, what the fuck is this movie?" and
Yeah.
shit. So it's like King has a power, man.
Yep.
He has a power.
He has a following.
and he is using it for good.
Yeah, for good.
Next up, he tweeted, says, Memorials, Richard Chismar, scary and hard to put down. You might be advised not to read it at night. Coming in October. So,
Ooh.
literary one there. And then next up, he's got... he tweeted and said, I got an advanced screener of Strange Darling, which is what we referred to earlier. And it's really terrific. I'll try to attach a trailer here because it's also a clever masterpiece. Can't say more. Watch the film and you'll understand what the trailer is up to. And I will attach the trailer to the show notes as well. But what was it we talked about? The writer of which writer was it that that wrote this basically was a writer that we talked about earlier. Is the guy that's writing The Long Walk?
I think so.
Yes, it is. So the guy that so that's another one of those like Osgood Perkins doing Long Legs, which is incredible, and he's doing The Monkey. You know, now we've got another one where it's like it sounds like one that, and I've actually been hearing a lot of buzz about this movie, Strange Darlings. Apparently, it's a serial killer. I've heard a lot of people talking about a serial killer movie, Strange Darlings. So I don't know.
Ooh.
I haven't even watched the trailer yet. I will watch it at some point soon. But that actually is coming out, I think not next week, but the week after. So look forward to that. And then King actually tweeted about it again. He says, I wish I could say more about Strange Darlings, but it's one of those films that's too clever to spoil, so best to say nothing.
I like
so it almost makes me wonder if, like, should I just not watch the trailer and just go in completely blind?
I like doing that.
Me too, but the fact that he says that the trailer itself is a clever masterpiece makes me think, like, maybe
And he says, like, watch the movie, then you'll understand the trailer. It's like, wait.
what are you doing?
What does that mean?
I see so many horror movies, I kind of wonder if I've already seen this trailer and I've just forgotten it. Because, for instance, this weekend, Cuckoo came out, and I know I've seen the trailer for that, and I was like, I want to see that. But I was like talking to my barber the other day, and I was like, oh, yeah, Cuckoo comes out this weekend. Maybe I'll go see that. She's like, oh, yeah, so-and-so's in that. I'm like, I couldn't tell you a single person. I couldn't tell you a plot point.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing a trailer and going, that
Yes.
looks fun.
Ted has the ability to wipe trailers from his mind.
Yeah, and then Hayden, I remember being slightly disturbed by the trailer. So that, again, made me think.
I mean, that happens with, 7 out of 10, so.
Oh, man. So now that moves us over to the Palaver section.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of different
Can I do one first?
things. Yes.
I need you to go check off Thinner for me.
Oh, have you not? Is that one not one you?
It's a new one for me. Finished reading it. So,
I gotta,
gotta mark that one off, and that's going to put me over 90%.
let's see. There's Thinner. That's what did you think of that one?
It was good. It was good.
Fat Tony, you're doing the reading.
It was
for
very
you?
interesting because I'm listening to it at work, right? And I get home from work, and my wife mentioned on the other show that she's been watching Criminal Minds. Yeah, the
Joe Montana.
Joe Montana. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Fat
Okay.
Tony.
He's just came into Criminal Minds that day. She watched like 3 episodes,
Yeah.
and it was the introduction of him where he comes in like
Yeah.
season 4 or 5, something
Yeah.
like that. And so it's just kind of, hey, wait a minute, like Spider-Man pointing at each other. Like
Yeah.
he
So-
came into her show, he's narrating my book.
Yeah. Then he's Fat Tony, and then he's Joey Zaza on Godfather 3 as
Yeah.
well. So.
So you were correct. You said Thinner had been made in 1996.
Yeah.
And so I just looked it up just to look.
How bad is it?
Joe Montana's in it.
Really?
He plays Richie Ginelli,
Okay.
which is gangster
Yeah.
in the film.
so I was
it's just like, wait, it's like even more so the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other.
In my head, I remember thinking to myself, Joe Mantegna with the adaptation, but I'm like, no, I'm just conflating the narrator. So no, I was correct in my original thought.
Is that how you say his name? Because it's a G.
Yeah, Joe Mantegna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fat Tony, you saying the mob only did something for me to get something in return? I will say good day to you. Okay, walks out the door.
Hey, wait
a minute. Also, big credit to Joe Mantegna. I've actually heard behind the scenes, he's basically told The Simpsons, if Fat Tony's ever on screen, he's like, even if he just sighs, I want to come in and do it. So
Oh, gosh.
he's got a commitment to the role, which is pretty cool. Because
That's really
obviously he's not just like a voice actor, right? He's like a legit actor that does a lot of shit. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, so I went through, not last episode, but the last roundtable, so a month ago, and I spent like 4 or 5 credits buying what I could on Audible.
Yeah.
And Thinner was one of them, so I decided to listen to that one.
Because you're getting to the
first.
point where you're pretty much, some of the stuff you haven't read is stuff that's not on Audible.
Yes.
Interesting.
Cycle of the Werewolf is not on there. Rage is not on there.
Which I know you're looking forward to Cycle of Werewolf.
Yeah, werewolves are my favorite. let me just tell you.
Yeah, that puts you at 91%.
Nightmare and Dreamscapes isn't on there. Regulators I did pick up, and Just After Sunset I picked up, I think.
Yeah, Nightmare Dreamscapes you said isn't available.
One of the short story collection where they break it up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they do like part 1, part 2, part 3, and each one is a credit. It's like, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
1 credit, 1 book. That's 1 book. Give me my book for 1 credit. Like, no.
Bastards.
It's a matter of principle at that point.
Oh, I agree.
So I can't remember which short story collections I did get, because there's 3 left. The Bazaar of Bad Dreams, Just After Sunset, and Nightmares and Dreamscapes.
Yeah.
And then the Regulators, I actually decided I'm going to read Desperation and the Regulators
Together.
They got to go together, right? Like
Yeah.
they're that kind of joined a little bit.
Yeah. Like peanut butter and jelly. Or anchovies and pizza.
Disgusting.
That is gross. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm going to take your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles box set away from you if you say that again.
And I love that your love of pizza, that just hurts you more than any
Fish on pizza. You're over here talking about pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, and then you say fish on pizza. What is wrong with you?
I mean, at least fish is meat, and meat is
No. Fish is not meat.
Oh, yes,
fish,
it is.
Fish is fish.
No,
like,
fish-
get out of here.
It's just meat. Have you seen those freaking people that actually legitimately think that?
Yes.
They think they
Yes.
can be vegan and eat fish.
Yes, I'm vegan, but I eat fish. It's like, wait.
Like,
Huh?
no. All right. So is that what you have?
That was it. Just that I had read Thinner. I enjoyed it. Short, to the point. And I got to say, man, Richard Bachman novels do not have happy endings. Holy fuck.
No, not happy endings like Pet Sematary or anything, you know.
I'm not saying that all of King's works have happy endings, but he does not get enough credit for the amount of happy endings that we get from books. I mean, to name a few, The Stand has a happy ending because Flag dies.
No, the happy ending is when he's still alive.
No, that's just a fever dream of his.
That's the happiest moment.
Yeah. You got 11/22/63 that has kind of like
Bittersweet.
Bittersweet, and everything. It has a happy ending. Like you
Yeah.
keep, I always expect and then under the city, the one egg that Ben missed. No, we don't have that. Like, Audra wakes up. Everyone survived, except for a couple. Like, majority of them survived when they all thought they were going to die. Like, King has quite a few happy endings. Cujo has a happy ending.
Carrie had a happy ending.
Cujo did.
Wiped out all those motherfuckers.
The bullies.
Let's see. I'm just looking through there. The Shining, you could argue, him overcoming and helping his family survive. You could,
especially the novel versus the movie, because Jack comes back at the end.
Yeah.
And sacrifices himself to try and save his family.
Yeah, the Dead Zone got a happy ending.
Oh, yeah.
there.
Sacrifices himself to save the country.
Yeah.
Save millions of lives.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some happy endings for sure. Definitely not The Wastelands. That is not a happy ending.
Oh, gassing the...
No ending at all. a cliffhanger. It's maybe King's worst ending of all time, except he torments us, the reader, instead of his characters.
That's
I'm
true.
okay with him tormenting the characters. I'm happy with that.
Jake.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Oh, he does not let that kid be, man.
Green Mile doesn't have a happy ending, except for the warden's wife, unless you listen to
So
John
Baraki
Coffey.
said.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading. Yeah.
No, you just didn't say Baraki.
Oh yeah, Baraki said that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it just depends on how you look at it. I mean, John wanted to go, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's what I'm saying. Exactly. That's bittersweet kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like
Shawshank's happy ending.
yeah, he gets out.
It's good. It's a good happy ending.
Red gets out too.
The warden eats a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love that. Hadley gets arrested.
Hadley gets arrested.
Although I have a hard time with Hadley, dude, because like he's hard up front and he did some heinous shit, but he also did a lot to help Andy.
Yeah.
Throughout the story, so it's like at the end, I just couldn't find myself hating Hadley like I hated like the warden, for instance.
I think it's one of those ones where it's like
I'm not gonna say he's good, not at all.
No, he's
It's
not a
just-
good. He's not a good guy, but he's not like absolute evil person.
Yeah, because like he doesn't like start abusing Andy, even though Andy's helping him. Like he ends up kind of like beating up the sisters, like putting the one in the wheelchair. Like he does shit to like help Andy. You know, like kind of like I don't know. I just feel like
But
there's
the thing I would argue is that if he's truly a good person, he would have done that without receiving anything. He doesn't do that until
Yeah.
he receives something. From
I wouldn't
Andy.
expect that from a prison guard, no matter what.
No, it's true. It's
But-
true. If you show weakness like that in a prison sense, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and again, I,
Dark Tower. Baraki says Dark Tower has a happy ending, and then ...
yeah, there's that picture of them all hugging around the Susie's trike.
What would you categorize Salem's Lot ending as?
Bleak,
That's
bleak.
all right. Let's go back to this town and
That's-
kill some fucking vampires.
Maybe as bleak as, or at least in the same realm of bleakness as Revival.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a couple different topics here in the,
Okay.
for the Palaver section. So possible practical discussions. So when the Flanagan series happens, I've just been thinking about this. So obviously we talked about hoping no matter where it goes, it'll be a weekly release, because not only would a dump hurt the show itself, it'll hurt our show.
Yeah.
It'll be really tough to like. How do you grasp if they just dump 10 or 12 episodes all at once? If they did it weekly, though, that would be far more beneficial to everyone, as well as like in general. I just feel like there are some shows that like they can kind of build with that, week to week audience where people are like speculating between episodes and, whatever, just discussion, podcasts. Like there's just that whatever. And like, I will admit part of this is because like I'm just coming off of the House of the Dragon finale, and this whole season I've been like kind of involved in like what that looks like. And I get like, this isn't an out of nowhere series, right? Like it's following up Game of Thrones or whatever. But it's just that's where some of these thoughts come from. So we've talked about we'll obviously figure it out when it becomes more official. Most likely, book clubs will end up getting paused if it ends up being a weekly release,
Yeah.
and we'll probably hyper focus on the show for the run of the show.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. So I've been watching House of the Dragon, and there's one podcast I listened to with some book readers, and I couldn't help but think what our show would look like when the time arrives.
Yeah.
So one takeaway is I'm not sure I would have thought about it, but being approachable to non-readers, namely isolating spoiler discussions. I know that I would not have listened to the podcast that I did for House of the Dragon if they were spoiling shit throughout the show.
Yeah.
But they actually do like our book clubs we've been doing where they have a spoiler section at the end. They warn everyone. And like these ladies go in depth. Like these episodes are like 4.5 hours long. Like, but a lot of times it'd be like 4 hours of like literally breaking down the most minute elements of the show. And there's like 100 fucking George R.R. Martin books that they're like pulling shit from. So it's big conversations, probably bigger than we could have. I mean, I think over the long term, we'll probably end up breaking the show down way more granularly. But in the moment, but they keep spoilers to the tail end where it's like I could listen to the whole thing and then shut it off because I don't want to know. Like I haven't went and looked at spoilers. I don't know anything about House of the Dragon. I have some suspicions. There's one spoiler from Game of Thrones that I accidentally hit on a reel where one character tells another character and
What
I'm like,
happened to someone?
yeah, and I'm like, oh well, there's that. No, I don't know the context of like how it happens, but I just know the context of something, and it completely bamboozled me because I was just like, oh, here's a scene. Because I remember there's one scene where they talk about it. It's when the Shireen is teaching the one dude to read, and they're reading the Dance of the Dragon, like the history of it, and so like she's teaching him to read. So you get small bits there. So I was just like, oh, as long as I don't watch those scenes too hard, I'll be fine, whatever. But of course, it was Joffrey. was watching the reels, and a Joffrey scene came up, and he just threw something out there, spoiler wise. But no. So I something I'm glad though that I've thought about, because it's like, yeah, when that time comes and we're doing like episode 1, you know, like it'll be interesting to break it up. And that, because ultimately the hope is the show ends up being a huge hit, and there's a lot of non-readers that are watching the show, and hopefully they're looking for podcasts, and we can be good discussions for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about it, because being in the midst of the House of the Dragon kind of made me think, like, what does the Flanagan series look like? I had never really thought about it practically, but yeah, it's kind of, I mean, we've already been doing it with the book club, so we kind of already have our practice with it, but you know, break down the episode as it is, all within itself, and then have a warning, and then get into like, oh my God, like.
So that's why we did the book clubs, just to prep for the Flanagan show.
I wish I had that kind of foresight and whatever, but no. Yeah, no, it was just kind of, that's one aspect. So the next one, next discussion topic I have. So we've discussed over the years if the particulars of each cycle are the same for Roland. For example, is it always Eddie Dean, or is it different on different cycles? Does he get different people? One thing I wondered is if you put yourself in that mind that it is different every time. I have a few questions that spring from that.
Okay.
So Eddie is a spiritual twinner of Cuthbert. Do you think that sometimes Roland winds up with spiritual twinners of Alan or Jamie or even Susan? Do you think that it kind of like cycles around to where it's like, it's not always like a Cuthbert twinner, but like, I mean, spiritual twinner, because it's not like a twinner where it's like, oh my God, you're Cuthbert. It's not that. It's like, but personality wise, it's like, do you think there's, and we don't know, this is all speculation, but do you think there's ever a time where like one of the cycles where it's an Alan like twinner?
I don't hold to that way of thinking. I think it's the same cycle every time. It may be different based off of Roland's actions, but it's Eddie, Jake, and Susanna and Oi every time.
Yeah,
And it's the same ones every time.
I guess I'm kind of split on that. I think Jake has always got to be there, because I think Jake is the most like.
Yeah, how do you have the story if you don't have Jake?
I think Jake's the linchpin, but I think the other characters are the ones where like, I think there may be different people in the doors or whatever, because like, and who knows? I mean, we're never going to know ultimately, right? Unless King went nuts and decided to start writing more Dark Tower shit,
or if we just got him on the show and asked him.
But yeah, it was just kind of like one thing I wondered, because you know, with the Eddie and Cuthbert thing, and we kind of know like what Eddie did for Roland during the course of the story, but it makes me wonder, like, what does a cycle look like if the twinner is more of an Alan type?
Yeah,
you know, and I know like Jake has the touch, so they have like that similarity, but it's like, what if it's an Alan personality type?
It's just the thing I think about is like how each member of the quartet has saved the quartet at one point or another. We've talked about this. You know, Roland and Eddie would be dead if it wasn't for Susanna killing Shardik.
Yeah.
The whole quartet would be dead if it wasn't for Eddie killing Blaine, you know?
Yeah.
And Jake figures out the plot in Wolves of the Calla. Roland suspects something, but he doesn't know who.
Yeah.
And everything. Jake's the one that figures that out.
Yeah.
And so I wonder about the logistics of it's different people every time. So do we have a different story every time? Is it not Blaine? Is it not Ludd? Are there no river crossing people? Is it different every single time?
And I think that would be the question ultimately, is like, does the different characters end up spinning a different tale where it's like, yes, they end up taking different routes or whatever. Like, I think that kind of gets, I know like now with the Marvel stuff doing like heavily in the multiverse, kind of gets into that realm. Was the one What If episode where it was like, he went through like every iteration he could to like try to stop something from happening one character did, and it's like no matter what variation happened, like it always, and something always ended up happening. And it's like maybe there are linchpin things in the Dark Tower story, but I don't know, I just for me it's tough to say because we only have one example, so it's hard to imagine. I don't even think I ever even considered it to be different, but I think there was actually a listener years ago that brought up like, is it always like Eddie and Susanna, or is like, and then like ever since then I've always had that idea in my head where like I think I still like the idea that it still is the same people, but maybe the story could be a bit different throughout the different times, whatever. But I'm also open to the idea that maybe it is, except for Jake. I do think Jake is so critical.
Baraki makes a point. He says at the end, Roland says, "All that to do over again." I take that literal, and every detail more or less happens every cycle. Because if he has to do it all over again, it's not going to this city instead of Lud. It's going to be, he has to do it over again. He has to go to Lud. He has to rescue Jake from TikTok Man and everything like that. And that's why Flag wants to break the cycle, is because it is a cycle. It's not a cycle if it's different. It can't be called a cycle if you're doing different things. A cycle is the same thing over and over again.
I think psycho could be in a looser sense.
I think that's taking liberties that aren't there.
No, because I think that, like, for instance, like him having the horn, I think then proves that, like, whatever, like, soul he redeemed in our journey, he kind of banks some of that into the next one, because otherwise he never would have stopped to pick up the horn. So it's like that's now a different Roland, and I think that's kind of the hope a bit that King gives you, is like this next one is potentially going to be different.
But how does that apply to saying that there's going to be different people behind the doors?
Because I mean, we don't know how many times he's done it, and I just think that.
Well, doesn't it imply that it's been thousands?
We don't know.
At the end of the book, doesn't it imply that?
I don't think there's ever, like, because it could be,
because that's what Roland's horror is that he realizes, oh my God, I've done this thousands of times.
I don't think there's ever a number given to it. I mean, there's some fans that speculate it's a 19th time, and that's why 19 pops up all the time. Others would suspect that it is like more like cosmic horror, and he's literally been thousands or millions of times.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to know really, because I think King,
because that's his damnation,
brilliantly wrote it in a way to where, like, we could have these discussions.
Yeah,
and I think that I think there is part. I mean, again, not saying that you have to, like, buy into the fact, but I do think that it's a legitimate thing that people can believe. Again, I don't know where I sit on it. I think I'm probably still more on the idea that it's always kind of the same, but it is. I think that it is possible, because I don't think there's anything in the books that defines. I think Jake is the only one that would have to always be the same, because he's so I mean, King's said that, like, Jake is that's Roland's damnation, is letting Jake die. So I think that is critical. But beyond that, I don't know. Because the other part, and then my next point is, so if that is the case, and the randomness of the tech can go to help or hinder Roland towards salvation, because I do think that, like, for instance, if it wasn't a land, say the previous iteration, and it was more of an Elan twinner, I don't think Roland evolves the same emotionally. He's the Terminator at the beginning, and he's kind of like caring, ready to sacrifice himself for Jake at the end. I think Eddie has a big part of that, because you need that. I think you need both Eddie and Susanna, and so that's what makes me wonder if, like, that's why the one that we saw is so like monumental, is because, like, Susanna kind of gives him, like, the stern, like, what did you just do to me? Like, you know, it's kind of like, I don't want to say judgment, because that sounds negative, but, like, she kind of gives him that motherly, like, what are you doing to us? Why are you treating us this way? You know? And then Eddie gives him I'm going to question you at every turn, but also I'm going to be fucking joking all the time. And it's just, I think both those things together are a yin and yang that just helped break Roland's walls down. And Jake is a big part of it too, obviously. But it kind of makes me wonder if there was a previous version where you got an Elan type instead of a Cuthbert type. I don't think Roland has some of the same edges roughed off that Eddie was able to do. So it makes me wonder, is, like, you know, would he be worse off if it were more of a timid Elan type?
And that takes away from the ending being a redemption.
Yeah.
It's not a redemption, then he's sent to hell, and this is his hell.
Oh, no, because I think
the thing is that if he's not redeeming himself, then what's the point of having different people then that make him go backwards?
Well, I would say that it could be like minute things, like the one previous to the one we saw could have been a land type, and it was nowhere near as good as it was in our version, but maybe there were some steps made that moved him a little bit, because I think it's like what's the like spectrum, I guess. Like, I think it's the spectrum for salvation is how I view it, and I think that Roland, if it's been thousands or 19 or whatever, I think that he's slowly moving that needle. And I think by the time we get to it, I truly believe the next cycle he's going to break it. I do. I think the horn is the sign where it's like Roland's evolved to the point where he's going to choose those he loves over the tower the next time through. And I think the horn's the symbol of that, because he now had the sentimentality to go, that's the horn that Cuthbert was blowing. I want that. Like, I want to keep that. I want to remember Cuthbert. But yeah, it just kind of made me wonder, like, you know, if it was a land, and I think I thought you'd like this, because it ultimately does give credit to Eddie, I think Eddie and Susanna together, you know, it's kind of like just different puzzle pieces, and each time maybe he's like moving a little bit, but I think this one's moved him so much because of the magic of these characters, of what Eddie was to him, what Susanna was to him. Ultimately, what I think Jake would be to him in all of them, because I think Jake's too important. But I do think that Eddie and Susanna have this weird, like, connection that, like, they were the perfect tool for Roland. And that speaks to King as a writer, because I think you want a flawed character, but then you want to put people and circumstances around them to try to better them. And I think that Eddie and Susanna are just, like, perfectly crafted to be those helpers to him, those ones to round his edges and to help bring him to that point of, like, Jake's not dying, I'm going to die. If this van is going to hit someone, it's going to be me. Also makes you wonder if the next cycle is the final one. Again, is it going to be the same Tet members? Or the one I would wonder about twinner-wise is, what about Susan? Yeah. What if someone's a Susan twinner in the next one? Because wouldn't that be the ultimate? Someone to, like, play it like that part of his youth.
What if it's take a Susan and replace Jake? What if that's the one you replace Jake with? Because that's where it started. That's where it started. Is that he had to choose between the Tower and Susan. Yeah. What if it becomes down to choosing between the Tower or Susan's twinner? Yeah. If you're going to go that far, go that far. Then.
And what if it's a bookend too, where it's like maybe the next chance is his last chance? Like, if you don't do this one, like,
you're done.
You're cast into the fucking void. Like, you're goner. And I don't know. And again, I know that it sounds like you're not as into the idea that it's different. But I still think I just
don't see how you could do it different. When every time I've read it, I've got the sense where Roland has the horror, oh my God, I've done this so many times. Yeah. And it's a cycle. To me, cycle means it's the same every time. Maybe little things are different, but Roland finds the doors on the beach. Roland goes to Lud. Roland goes to the Kalas and battles the wolves.
I think that's one way to look at it for sure. But I guess from my perspective, this way of looking at it would be more of like Doctor Strange looking at 14 million ways that the future unfolds.
Right. But the thing is that in those 14 million that Strange looked at, Spider-Man is still there. Iron Man is still there. Drax is still there. Star-Lord is still there. All of the essential things are still the same. It's just that this time Spider-Man goes left instead of going right. Well, this time Spider-Man goes up instead of going down.
Because that is a bad example, though, because ultimately all he's doing is taking this point, looking into the future. So it has to be all those things.
That's kind of the thing with the Dark Tower.
What I'm talking is like almost even more of like a multiverse facet, because, like, I don't know, I guess to me the doors feel very supernatural and like outside of the realm. So it just makes you wonder if, like, whatever's being place that horn outside of the loop back into the loop, is that being also maybe shuffling the doors?
Is there a being controlling that, or is it Flag? Because the Flag's the one that reads his fortune with the tarot cards and says the prisoner, the Lady of Shadows, and death, but not for you, Gunslinger. So is it Flag? I mean, literally, the picture on the screen right now is that.
I don't think he's.
So is it Flag doing that?
I don't think it's Flag creating it, though. I think Flag is like telling the future, right? But telling a future that he can't control. Otherwise, why wouldn't it just be like Jack Mort, someone worse than him, and then someone even worse than him?
Mordred behind door number 3.
Those are the 3. Because, like, wouldn't he do? If it was Flag's choice, I feel like it would end up being just like the most heinous, like, unhelpful. I mean,
well, no, but the thing is that would be detrimental to Flag's thing, because your theory is that Flag needs him to stop, not die. Yeah, stop. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like that. That's the whole thing, based off of what you believe that Flag's outside the cycle.
I think dying stops Roland too, though, because
then just kill him.
Well, I think he tries. I mean, he tried with Andrew Quick. He tried, like a few different with the whole palace. There was the line in the Emerald Palace from Wizard of Oz. Yeah, he talked, or no, it's with Andrew Quick, where he's like, they should have been killed already. Like, they're already too far where they should, like, whatever. And it's like, I just need you to ensure. Essentially, the gist he's getting is like, they shouldn't be this far. They're way too close as it is, and I can't let them getting any closer. So I think he is trying to kill Roland, because I think it's either stop Roland or kill Roland. One of the two is the way to break the cycle.
And he's tried so many times to kill him that doesn't work. So let's try convincing him to break his oath. Yeah.
What am I missing in the chat? It looks like
quite a bit. David said a while ago, and I didn't want to bring this up because we were having that discussion. He said, I've read the series maybe about 20 times. About 3 or 4 times back, I accidentally imagined Jasper Beardsley from The Simpsons as Hendrik. This has changed my life for the better.
Sidewalks walking, not your fence
That's
walking.
your fancy walking.
I love Jasper, man. He's one of my. I love all the old people in Simpsons. They're all the best characters, dude.
Baraki says, yeah, everything could be different in the last cycle, which I think is cycle 19, but that is speculation. But I think the same people behind the doors.
And again, I think that I'm not saying I'm not. I guess I wanted this for the discussion, but it's not to say that I'm forcing like that you do believe it's different. I'm just saying if it were different, it's interesting to think about
the mechanics of it.
Because again, what if the last one was Alan and it just you don't have that Eddie to like to chip away at Roland on that side, so Roland is just stays more cold blooded.
Well, you're assuming that Alan wouldn't have an effect on Roland.
I think he might, but I don't.
I think he would because Alan is better than Cuthbert. Alan is more noble than Cuthbert in the sense that when you look at the two side by side, I think Alan may still call Roland on his shit, but he may call on him on his shit in a different way. Yeah. It may be like, Roland, that's wrong. We can't do it that way. We need to be better. Kind of the Alan twinner, I mean, of course, when I say that.
No, yeah, for sure.
But I wonder if that still sands it down a little bit, like you're saying. Maybe not the same way that that Eddie does, the Cuthbert twinner, but I still think that if we're going to have a cycle, we need to have the same things happen. Maybe not maybe it's not TikTok Man next time. Maybe it's Crocodile Man. Maybe it's it's Alligator Man. He's got the jaws of an alligator.
And I think
he's deformed.
I think his choices also define the future, right? Like if he chooses not to let Jake drop, like I think that cycle now looks a whole lot different. Yeah, and it's like,
well, if he doesn't, David says if he doesn't kill Jake the first time, then Jake doesn't have to come back, which means we don't have to have Mordred.
Yeah,
that ends that.
Now you stop Mordred exactly. So it's like,
but Roland still can. Because if Roland has to cry off the tower to save Jake, which means that it all comes back to the same question that we've had for how long have we been doing this podcast? 6-7 years now?
Well, I don't even think it's
is what happens to the beams. If Roland doesn't continue and stop them from destroying the beams, the Dark Tower falls and all of existence is wiped out. Correct?
Yeah, but once they stop, I think the moment of choosing is after Algo.
So he has to let Jake drop then. That's a question.
Well, okay, because here's the other thing. You're talking about a lot of theories we've had over the years. I will say there was a little bit of a monkey wrench because it was King in the last year or so in an interview that said that Roland's damnation comes from dropping Jake. Like that's the beginning of it all. I don't think any of us had ever calculated that. I think that I always calculated out that he was damned even before that. Like that was a part of his damnation, but it wasn't the root of his damnation. Right?
That's when it was. Like, all right, he's done.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just interesting to me. I like I said, I'm split on it. I do love to have some of these thoughts where it's like, what does it look like? But also, I think most of my life I've considered it that it is probably the same people for sure. But it does make me wonder because the Susan thing is the thing that would be like you said, if it ended up being different people and Susan was in that role of Jake for that last one.
Does he drop a 14-year-old girl there?
I don't know if she'd be 14. I think it would probably be someone that could be like romantically attached to him in a way, right?
Does he drop an 18-year-old Susan twinner right there?
If it's after the cycle we saw, no way.
No way.
Because I think that he's redeemed enough of his soul in our cycle that the next one he's a much different person. I don't think he lets Jake drop the next time through. I don't. I just think that because again, I think the horn is the symbol perfectly written by King, given to us to show that all of the evolution that he had in this isn't flushed and he doesn't immediately become line one Roland again. Because that would be, then it's just damnation if that were the case.
Well, see, that's the thing. Isn't that what it says? Like, he's back in the desert. Like, he's that Roland again. So that's where.
But having the horn is the big indicator that, like, this is different. This isn't the same Terminator Roland. This is one
I really do need to listen to the series again. It has been a few years since I've listened to the whole book 7, 1 through 7. I mean, I did listen to Wind Through the Keyhole when we did our deep dive on it and everything.
Yeah,
but I have not listened to books 1 through 7 again in a while, and I think that's going to be on my docket coming up here by the end of the year. And I really do want to revisit some of this stuff because there's things that I remember where it's like, Roland there's no chance.
Yeah.
I'm almost to the point where I believe that Roland's fucked. Roland fucked himself by that if you say that you have to go to the Dark Tower. I think the pink orb, wizard glass, steered him wrong, and that's his damnation. Is that he becomes a tower junkie and that there is no redemption.
And I'm not going to say that's a wrong interpretation. I just think that everyone's different when it comes to because that comes into the old Laurie Strode conversation. Is it fate or is it destiny?
Right.
Or those are the same thing. Fate or choice, like free will, basically. Yeah. And I think that gets into the fatalistic, he is already damned and this is just his damnation.
But at the same time,
that is an interpretation.
But at the same time, you're ignoring the fact that he chose that. So you're saying that, it comes down to between choice and fate. Well, he did choose that. He chose the tower over Susan.
Yeah. Does
that damn him? So it's not a matter of fate or destiny. It comes down to that was still his choice.
I think a singular choice that is your moral, or I guess you're living or dying eternally, whatever the fuck we're talking about here is. I think that gets into that's almost destiny type stuff too. Because if it's one decision, then the rest of your life is fucked. That's pretty fatalistic.
Or is that just a cardinal sin kind of thing? Because that comes into the same thing as the religion side of things. It's okay, you choose to murder someone once. That's one choice according to most religions. That damns you. So you're saying that it has to be more than one choice? I mean, why? Because
I believe that it's I don't know. I don't see morality in that same kind of Old Testament black and white.
I know, but if we're looking at it in that sense of damnation and everything like that, that's the closest thing we have to equate it to. And there are examples where one choice can damn you.
I think I've always felt this, especially probably because the cycles are very whatever. But I think this feels more Eastern to me, where you have the reincarnation and rebirth and whatever. I think I've always viewed it that way, less Western and Christian, and more Eastern. Again, cycles.
Well, that's what Baraki says. We don't know if Roland's damnation is eternal and the price which has to be paid to keep the tower from falling, or if Roland is redeemable. And that's kind of what you're saying is we don't know.
Yeah,
that's just what I'm saying is that it seems more and more, the more and more I read it, the more and more it seems dude's already damned. He's made his choice. He's got to lay in the bed now. You know?
And I think the great thing is that King wrote it in a way to where, because I've had some pretty strong convictions, and then I'll read it again, and it changes.
Oh yeah,
and
every time.
Because I think if King had ended it very overtly, where it's Roland is damned, he's just a bad person, and this is his damnation.
Why would you want to read that again?
I wouldn't say it would negate the whole series, but I think it would lessen the series to
absolutely,
because it's just okay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is maybe I would revisit it, but I wouldn't want to revisit it often.
Yeah,
I know what type of piece of shit I'm reading about. I don't want to read that again for 7 books. Yeah. But is he redeemable? But yeah, we've gone over a little bit. We got another show to do.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in the chat that I wanted to hit. Let's see. Baraki also asked if there's a cycle where Roland can remember all the previous cycles. I don't think so, because I think that completely undoes everything. Yeah. If he remembers, I think then that's almost supernatural, and that'll allow him to make the right choices easier. I guess us, right? How much easier it would be if we were inserted into Roland's spot, knowing and remembering the stories. It'd be well, I know how to solve this puzzle. And I know how to not drop Jake right. We would approach it differently. That would almost be too supernatural.
It's one of those ones where the person's time traveled and he's nope, stop. And the truck goes by, and exactly. that's Roland right there.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Good discussion though. News wise, there was a lot of good news, but I had a couple of things that had been jumbly in my head, and I'm I might have another one for next month.
Excellent.
Too. So, but yeah, thank y'all for being part of the conversation. Let's go ahead and hit the outro stuff real quick, because we are pretty much at time. If you want to, let's see, get down to here. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do it on any podcasting service of your choice. You can stream us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, any number of places, as well as you can find us over here at youtube.com/Dark Tower Palaver. If you want to join us live, like Baraki and David did we have somebody?
Alan.
Alan as well. You could do that over here at youtube.com/DarkTowerPalaver. If you want to join us live, you can, or you could watch the episodes after the fact. If you aren't able to make it live, the videos all stay up and everything. If you want to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, we'd appreciate that. You find the show notes over at DarkTowerPalaver.com. And if you want to support the show, you can do that over at patreon.com/DarkTowerPalaver. And then Peter can let you know the ways to contact us and give us your thoughts on some of this questions we talked about here, because it's obviously one that everyone has opinions on, which I love.
Yeah. Best way to reach us is email at show@darktowerpalaver.com, and then check out our social. It's at darktowerpod, at darktowerpod on Twitter. Our blue sky is at darktowerpalaver.bsky.social, facebook.com/darktowerpalaver, and then our Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And check out our merchandise at tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver.
Indeed. And I do want to say, Brocky did say, if Roland is damned eternally, then how would the tower, Gan, or whoever introduce the horn? And I agree with you, because I don't think that Roland is damned eternally. I think that would be a lesser story. And I do think King gave us enough ambiguity that I think if you really wanted that to be the way you viewed it, you probably could. But I think most of us don't want that way. And I think that we have all the evidence we need to show that there's a spectrum here, and Roland is hopefully on his way to redemption. So whether it be, and yeah, maybe the next time is 19, and maybe that's why all the 19s are there, where it was just like, all right, it's 18 times, the 19 is your key one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be it for this episode. We'll be back in a fortnight for the next Wizard and Glass book club. We're right at about 50%. I think next episode we might actually.
I think you figured out that we were over 50% because of the stuff at the end last time.
Oh, okay. Or I think we were close.
I think you said like we went to 51 or 52% last time.
Or
maybe it was 49. I don't know.
We're getting close though. We're chugging along to the halfway mark. If we're not just past it. Pretty exciting though. Things are starting to heat up a little bit. Some secrets have been exposed, and Rhea is back. So now we just need Ermot and Musty.
No.
So, but yeah, we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
Oi. All right, thank y'all for joining in the chat. Thanks for being part of the conversation. You guys are awesome. And yeah, we love it. We'll be back in a couple weeks. And then if you want to join us at the Geekery Abides, we'll be over there shortly as well. See you guys.
Bye, everyone.